actually be 5 minutes this time, guys. All right, here we go.
This is This between us.
The number one podcast in the world.
This is
the JBU.Show featuring Austin
from the Miller Talk Podcast.
ALLAN,
The American Sincerest.
and now your host,
Cam Allen.
All right. Oh, I didn't mean to cut it off soon. How's it going, everybody? My name is Chris, and this is the JBU Show. And I fully expected there to be absolutely no news today. Of course, there is. It's Sunday, February 22nd, and it looks like Mexico is burning to the ground as we speak. Now, of course, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but we'll get into it here and go through the details, find out exactly what's going on. I will say this, if you are in Mexico right now, do anything you can to not look American. That's probably the best advice that I could give. We also have another potential attempt on Trump's life. We'll take a look into that with some interesting details coming out about that here in a little bit. But first, as I like to start off with a video here, maybe we'll start off with why the grass is not always greener on the other side. Uh-oh. Why do we have no volume? Well, isn't that lovely? Give me just a second here while I figure out why we can't hear anything. Is this the problem? No, this isn't the problem. Uh-oh. Well, this is going to be a big damper on the show. Give me just a second here and figure out what's going on. This is what happens when I don't have time to test everything out like I'm supposed to before the show. Sunday is always a unique day because I don't usually have any time in here before we actually start the show. All right, this is not cool. What if we do this then? Oh, actually, you know what? Hang on, it might be this over here. Try it like this.
No, the housing crisis
All
here
right,
is
now,
worse
I
than
know
the United
I can hear that, but let me
States.
make sure you guys
I
can
lived
hear
in
it.
LA for 6 years, and I have not faced
guys can
rent
hear it.
as bad as here. When
Okay. Sounds like you guys can hear it. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and play the video then. It's going to be a little bit quieter than usual. I apologize, but I don't know what's going on with the volume here.
I'm a scholar of the far right who has fled the United States to Canada, and I need help. The situation in Canada is absolutely dire. For Americans who don't know, the housing crisis here is worse than in the United States.
You don't
I lived
say.
in LA for 6 years, and I have not faced rent as bad.
I just want to point out, she just said, I lived in LA for 6 years. She moved from literally the worst housing market in the United States, besides maybe New York, and can't figure it out in British Columbia, which, in case you're not aware, that is the province of Canada, the only province of Canada I'm actually familiar with, because it's on the shares border with Washington State, of course. And it's probably like the least Canadian, I guess, because it's so far away from the East Coast.
That is here. When my partner, our cat, and our dog fled the United States, we headed north with the goal of being close to where our families are located, which is on the West Coast. So we are now in British Columbia. More specifically, we are in the Sea to Sky Highway in the Greater Vancouver area. We are attempting to find housing in this the western side of this region. My partner and I are here on a visitor visa, which
I
is
couldn't have guessed.
6 months possible stay for Americans.
Whoa, so they didn't just let you come in and cross the border. Last I checked, there's no fence. It's literally just like a grass line. You actually went through a port of entry? Why did you bother? If you would have just came in illegally, they would have just given you a house, right?
But while you're here on a visitor visa,
The
you
disconnect
can't
is so
work.
incredible.
So we are currently surviving off of what savings we could get together before we fled the United States. And that's not terribly much. And in Canada, I think it's actually the cost of living crisis is worse here, especially when you are shut
Really?
out of the healthcare system, when you can't access any of the resources that Canadians have access
Even
to.
if you're in the healthcare system, it's
and
not
that's
that good.
understandable. You know, I'm not a citizen of the country, but it is making the financial
Why don't you put them
situation
elbows
dire
up?
because we can't work. Because there are 2 adults, a cat and a dog, we are looking for more than a room, but a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom for free or below market rates. And I know that's a huge ask.
All right, that's
But that's what
That's
we
enough.
need.
She goes on quite a bit. She's literally asking for help with her rent because they cannot find a place that they can afford. It's almost like you could have figured this information out before you moved. That this is the best country on earth, despite what people think of it. And look, I understand that a lot of leftists will hear me mocking her and they'll be, how could you? She is suffering right now. Look, I empathize with the struggles of being poor. I've been there many times. She entirely brought this, her and her partner, entirely brought this on themselves by making a rash decision to move to Canada for no apparent reason. Donald Trump is not coming after you because you're a woman. Donald Trump is not coming after you because you're gay. You are not going to be thrown in a gulag. Now, if you're here illegally and you do not have citizenship, you have overstayed your visa, you claimed asylum even though you didn't have the right to claim asylum, there are very specific rules that are laid out, then yes, you might be deported. Not thrown in a gulag, deported. And for those that are confused, because ICE keeps buying new facilities to house people, ICE is not choosing to house these people. When you are arrested or detained, rather, by ICE, you can sign a paper that says, I acknowledge I've been caught. Deport me. And be deported. Or you can say, I have extenuating circumstances and would like to fight my deportation because we, the terrible country that we are, give every illegal immigrant that opportunity for some reason. And yes, I say for some reason, because if you're caught here illegally, you refuse to self-deport on your own, even though you've had that option for well over a year now, even though many have been here, as the left constantly claims, for 10, 15, 20 years, never bothered to try and become a citizen or even get legal residency. If you choose to sign that paper and say, I want to fight my deportation, well, that comes with a consequence of having to stay in detention until a court can hear your case. If that's what you want to do, fine. But you chose to stay in detention. At any point, you can sign that paper and leave. It's not a gulag. It's not even a jail. You cannot just sign a piece of paper and leave jail whenever you feel like. But maybe that could be a warning and a lesson to some that the grass is not greener. There is literally nowhere on earth that the grass is greener. Despite all of our problems, this is as good as it gets. And if you live in California or New York or my home state of Washington, it gets better if you move the hell out of these states. But I certainly wouldn't leave the other 50. If you would have just done a little bit of research, you would have found out that the housing crisis is worse in Canada, that the cost of living is considerably higher, and that even though healthcare is free in that you pay in your taxes instead of directly, unless you have a boo-boo that can be fixed with a Band-Aid, you'll be lucky to get care. At least, well, they'll give you care, no problem, meaning the program titled Care, where they offer you suicide because you broke your leg. Yes, they actually do that. Why? Because it's cheaper for the health system. Anyway, but moving on, I kind of want to get into this main topic because being Sunday, I haven't had time to get into any of this stuff. I just collected a bunch of the information and we'll go through it together on the show. But I'm not sure I believe this headline, my own headline. Because of course, as we all know, this type of thing only happens in America. Allow me to explain what I mean here. Let me see if I can, hang on. I said that, but give me just 1 second. I'm going to try and put the audio back how it's supposed to be so we can actually hear it. All right, so you're going through there. It's not showing up there for some reason. And it's not. Okay, that's plugged in. That's plugged in. Oh. That might be the problem.
Here live in Port.
Ha! Got it. And I'll double check while this is playing. You guys can hear it. So if you hear a little double audio, just ignore it. It'll go away.
Vallarta, Mexico, just had the military driving past
Sounds like
me,
you
and
guys
as I
can hear
understand it, I should not be around anywhere where the police or the military are, because they are the target right now. As you can see, this whole place is like deserted right now because there's burning cars back there, burning cars right here still smoldering, and the situation is incredibly intense. As I'm sure you've already heard, there was a top drug lord cartel member, El Mencho, who has been killed. I believe there was a $15 million bounty on this man's head, and he is now dead, and that has caused this whole situation to pop off. The place looks like an absolute war zone right now, folks. Cartel has been setting up.
So we'll get more into that here in a few minutes, but I thought this only happened in America. I thought mass violence of any kind only happened in America. But apparently, Mexico is under siege right now. Chaos in the streets, stores are being looted, cars burned, houses burned, literally everything is burning right now, actually. Threats of kidnapping and ransoms and a whole lot more. We'll get into all of that. But of course, thankfully, the amazing and truly advanced nation of Mexico affords its citizens the right to protect themselves from ruthless thugs at times like this, affording them their most basic human right: the right to bear arms in defense of themselves, their families, and their neighbors against the against the evil drug regimes that are terrorizing the state. Really? Sure about that? Hang on 1 sec. Okay. Apparently, I'm being told that it appears that Mexico has instead opted to disarm its citizens in favor of a more progressive utopian approach that has instead co-opted the police and military forces that are paid for by the taxpayers, those citizens, to protect the powerful elites while the citizens fend for themselves. Unarmed, completely helpless. It seems if we've learned anything so far, it's that maybe we should rethink the whole only bad guys have guns thing. Just a thought. Now look, obviously I'm being facetious, right? Mexico took away its citizens' rights to bear arms a long time ago, to defend themselves. And that's part of why this violence reigns supreme. Because They don't do anything to stop the cartels, or hardly anything. They occasionally do some photo ops where they burn down a drug house, that the cartel probably called them up and was like, hey, we're done with this one if you want to burn it or whatever. And so they'll go and take a photo op and, oh, look, we killed some low-level dealers and bangers. And then they move on and nothing ever changes. The cartels just get bigger, they get more powerful. Mexico says, no, don't help us, we got it. And who is it that suffers? The citizens. There is one gun store in the entire country of Mexico, and only police can buy firearms. Well, and the cartel members, of course. It's really laughable that they so viciously enforce citizens not having guns in a place where 1 out of every 2 people is a member of the cartel. And yes, that's an exaggeration, but not that much. You basically have 2 main cartels that run the country: the government and the drug cartels together. There's, I don't know, like 3 or 4 main ones right now. The one that is currently at hand is the newest and most ruthless of them, the new Jalisco or whatever. Again, we'll get into the details here in a second, but just kind of laying out the background here. And the government basically protects the 2 or 3 tourist areas because that's their main source of revenue. And they take photo ops pretending to keep the cartels at bay for the citizens. Of course, the citizens don't believe it. They know better. But that's why everybody comes here. But they militantly enforce the laws on citizens while completely ignoring the cartels because they can't do anything about it. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound something like, we tax all the middle class people, they have to follow all the rules and laws, and you get a ticket if you're going a little bit too fast, or you forgot to put your seatbelt on, or maybe you're busy and you're talking on the phone, you forgot to put your Bluetooth in. But if you want to go and steal a car and use it to steal less than $950 worth of stuff from Walmart and then sleep in that car tonight in the middle of the street, they can't do anything about that. Honestly, I don't know why the Mexican citizens put up with it. I mean, I guess because they have to, right? They've been disarmed. I watched a documentary long ago, and it's probably a pretty popular one. It was probably just a Netflix documentary of some sort. But it was talking about many years ago how there were a couple citizens groups that tried to rise up and fight the cartels because the government wasn't doing it. And they were succeeding. They were running the cartels out of certain towns until the government came and took all their guns. And they were good, law-abiding citizens. So even though they didn't want to, even though they thought better of it, they handed them over. You know where those guys are today? Most of them, anyway. Some probably joined the cartel in order to spare their families. The rest are 6 feet under. I understand that this seems like a world away. It's not. And if Democrats had their way in this country, and I shouldn't say Democrats, if progressives had their way in this country, that would be here. The good news is they're not in charge at the moment. And so if this threat becomes real to Americans at all, we might be able to end this right now. Yes, it's a little bit of a clickbait headline, but it's kind of not. Because right now the cartels are threatening to go into places like Puerto Vallarta and take hostages, tourist hostages, primarily American citizens. And I can tell you that would be the dumbest thing that they could do. Because we no longer have a president that is willing to ignore Americans dying. having an American passport means something again. And anybody that tries to harm an American overseas, and in particular on our border, should probably expect a JDAM through their front door within 24 hours. At least I hope. Anyway, I'm going to allow this man to continue. So this is, by the way, I want to give him a shout out because Dan Dix, that's right. He's getting stepped on a lot. A lot of people have taken his footage. He is a tourist, or not a tourist. He is a journalist, rather, that is down there in Puerto Vallarta right now. He was covering something else, and this all kind of happened, so he's kind of stuck. No flights out, nothing. We'll talk about all this started in a minute, but I want to let him finish this video here, kind of showing you the state. This is many hours ago, so things have progressed from here even, but it's getting pretty crazy.
Blockades in the streets, stopping cars. A whole bus was set on fire. You've got Cartel members who literally look like the military. These guys are serious. These guys mean business. Costco was set on fire. A hospital was under attack. People running for their lives. There was the Guadalajara airport that was under attack. People literally running all over the place, screaming and crying. The Puerto Vallarta airport as well has had a big scare. A lot of people were evacuated on the tarmac. Had to run out on the runway to get away from the intense situation. And it seems like it's not about to slow down anytime soon. As I understand it, the cartel have announced that they are going to be entering private homes and potentially hotel resorts at 5 p.m. Our time if their demands are not met.
It's now 7 o'clock
So,
West Coast time.
This thing could
We'll
be
check in on these
just the
claims.
beginning of what we're seeing here. I mean, the situation is so intense. I've been doing reports from my resort where there was just smoke surrounding all over the place, cars being lit on fire everywhere, and I've been posting those to my Twitter, Dan Dix PFT. A lot of people have been.
This is, by the way, I'm going to let him finish his... Oh, sorry. I'm going to let him finish his pitch here in a second. But this is why I said at the beginning, if you are in Mexico right now, I doubt you'd be listening to this, but if you are, do anything you can to eliminate... You can't really dump your passport. You need it. If you can hide it in a safe place for the next 48 hours or whatever it is until you can get out of there, anything that connects you to the U.S., you certainly shouldn't be walking around out in the open like this. I don't know that your hotel room, if they are in fact, if there becomes any proof that they are in fact going hotel to hotel, or there is not sufficient military presence to prevent them from doing that, I'm not sure I would stay in my hotel room even. Because that's just, saying, hey, I'm a tourist. I would do anything I could to blend and to hide because nobody is going to do it for you down there. Anyway.
Re-uploading the footage and just saying, look at this footage a tourist got. I'm not a tourist, guys. I'm a journalist. I'm here working, actually. I've been speaking at a conference for the last 5 days in attendance at this conference, and I'm here now documenting on this situation live, and it was a little scary being over there right as I'm starting the video. I had military rolling up on me, and as I understand it, that could often be cartel members. And if it's not, these guys are the guys who are being targeted by the cartel members. So very, very intense situation popping off right here. As I said, go to my Twitter if you want to keep up to date with my reports on this, Dan Dix PFT. Again, I don't really care if people re-up the footage and get it out, without credit to me. The most important thing is we get the word out about what's happening here, and that the situation is pretty dire. I mean, people are dying. It's rather intense. It's rather scary. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fly home tomorrow. I'm supposed to get on a plane, but as I understand it, the airports are currently shut down. So that may still be the situation tomorrow. So stay tuned for my coverage. I might be stuck here for a little while. If you guys want to support me, go to pressfortruth.ca. Make sure you follow me on all the major platforms that I'm posting on. And if you want to financially support my efforts to cover this, you can go to pressfortruth.ca/donate. But again, the most important thing right now is just to share this information. You're not going to get a lot of this probably from the mainstream media, and I'm here on the grounds. So I will do my best to bring you the truth of what's happening here. So just wanted to give you this quick little update, guys. Stay tuned for more. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.
All right, so that was, like I said, many hours ago today. So now let's see what we can find here on some later information. So this all started because Mexican military or police, I'm not sure exactly, hopefully we'll find out here in a minute, killed the leader of the gang, which is, let me get the name of it here. The name of the guy that they killed was El Mencho, apparently, who is the head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNJ, or NG rather. And we have heard Jalisco, I guess, whatever. We have heard a lot about these guys in recent months. They are apparently the most ruthless gang or cartel to sweep Mexico. They are one of the latest and one of the fastest growing. My guess is they didn't mean to kill this guy. My guess is they were doing another photo op and screwed up. I don't know for sure. Look, maybe there's people inside the Mexican government that are trying to do good. But I know for sure that with the power that these cartels have, nobody is elected to Mexican government without their blessing. It just doesn't work that way. They have far more power than Mexico itself does as a country. They bring in far more money than Mexico itself does as a country. And it's pretty obvious, too. Their last elections, something like 43 mayoral or governor or whatever candidates were murdered. Basically anybody that wasn't their preferred candidate, because that's how they do it. Here, I'll put up a picture of him. This is El Mencho right here. It looks familiar for some reason. I don't know if I'm conflating him with an actor or something, but he looks familiar. So this is actually from MexicoNewsDaily.com. Nemiso El Mencho Ruben Osguera Cervantes. Now look, I can't speak Spanish. I'm terrible at names as it is, so... Founder and top leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was killed by federal forces Sunday morning, according to the Ministry of Defense. That's all in Spanish, so I can't read that for you. The operation was led by the Army and federal forces in Jalisco, in an area known to be controlled by El Mencho. In a press release, the Ministry of Defense said that during an operation to arrest El Mencho, Mexican military forces came under fire and were forced to defend themselves. 4 CJNG operatives were killed in the firefight. 3 more, including El Mencho, were gravely injured. They were airlifted to Mexico City but died en route, according to the Defense Ministry. In addition to Mexican military intelligence, United States authorities contributed information used to carry out the operation. And this has a lot to do, make no mistake, this would not be happening if it wasn't for Trump putting pressure on them. And maybe because this is the newest kid on the block, maybe the other cartels got together with the Mexican government and said, we got to give them somebody, because Trump is putting a lot of pressure on them, as he should be. The operation was led... reports of security operations started circulating this morning in the municipality of Tapala, a town located some 90 kilometers south of Guadalajara, the state's capital. Residents in that area reported overflights and the presence of military convoys, which foreshadowed a large-scale deployment. Narco blockades of roads and highways were reported in Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara, immediately after the operation. Blockades and unrest have since been reported in at least 6 states, including Jalisco, Michoacan, Colima, Tamaulipas, Guanajuato, and Aguasas Calientes, or whatever, I don't care. Mexico. In many places in Mexico. Later, road blockades were reported in at least 6 states. We just covered that. Videos that circulated on social media showed the burning of vehicles and public buses in Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara, and Tapalapa, whatever. Residents also reported burning of pharmacies and convenience stores in different parts of Guanajuato. In Puerto Vallarta, residents reported that the city was under siege by men on motorcycles and the sound of gunshots. Authorities are maintaining active operations in several states to contain possible reactions and reinforce security following one of the most significant events in the fight against drug trafficking in recent years. Who was El Mencho? He was considered the top leader of CJNG, one of the most powerful and violent cartels in Mexico, with a strong presence in Jalisco, Colima, Michoacan, or whatever, and other states. He also played a key role in trafficking of methamphetamine and fentanyl to the United States. The U.S. Department of Justice has issued federal charges against him and offered multi-million-dollar rewards for information leading to his capture. $15 million, last I checked. El Mencho's death opens the door to possible internal reshuffling, succession disputes, and risks of increased violence in territories where CJNG operates. Something that security specialists see as a likely scenario after the fall of such a consecrated leadership. All right. That's a little bit of the backstory. We know airlines, as we're seeing here on the screen now, have been suspended. Early reports were that there were certain flights being suspended. As far as I know at this point, all flights essentially out of these contested areas have been suspended. Maybe there are flights out of other places, so if you are stuck in one of these places, you might be able to, get elsewhere. Maybe. I don't know. The operator of the Guadalajara International Airport said Sunday that no incidents had occurred inside the facility despite reports of the presence of armed men. I wonder where the video of people running and shots being fired came from then. In a statement posted to X early Sunday, which, by the way, we will check X threads for the latest information, the Pacific Airport Group said that the Guadalajara airport was operating normally just hours after the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, Nemesio El Mencho, was killed in a federal operation. GAP said there were no cancellations or impacts on flight-related events in Jalisco where fiery narco blockades appeared on highways and roads on Sunday morning. The situation recorded in various areas of the state are not impacting the internal operation of the airport terminal nor safety within the facilities. The air terminal is under the protection of the National Guard and Ministry of National Defense. The airport operator said that no incidents had occurred inside the airport and declared there was no risk to passengers, airport workers, or visitors. Perhaps it happened outside then. This is one of the videos here. Hey, look. It's just people running. But who knows? Apparently referring to video footage showing people panicking and running inside the airport. Information and material circulating on social media doesn't correspond to situations of risk inside the terminals, but rather hysteria among passengers. GAP released its statement after some media outlets, including the newspaper La Ronda, reported the presence of armed men at the airport. An MND source who was at the airport said everyone suddenly started running despite there being no apparent threat. Possible. It does happen. Earlier in the day, Guadalajara Airport advised passengers to allow extra time to arrive due to unforeseen situations on the highway to Chapala that may change traffic conditions. Meanwhile, Air Canada said on X that due to an ongoing security situation in Puerto Vallarta impacting the airport, Air Canada has temporarily suspended operations. We're monitoring the situation and in contact with local authorities who are working to resolve the issue. Customers are advised not to attempt to go to the airport unless their flight is shown as operating on aircanada.com, and we will be directly notified of changes to their itineraries. We will share the information as soon as it becomes available. In a separate statement, Gap said that some flights from Manzanillo Airport had been canceled. That airport is located in the state of Colima. Gap advised passengers to contact their airlines to obtain up-to-date information, yada yada. Some bus services have also been canceled or delayed, presumably due to the risk of violence and the fact that a lot of them were on fire on Mexican highways this Sunday, as CJNG members react to the death of Dickhead, who was wanted both in Mexico and the United States. One affected service was between Mexico City's northern bus terminal and the city of San Miguel, in the state of Guanajuato or whatever. So look, even if some of these reports are exaggerated and nobody ends up going door to door anywhere or anything like that, I hope that's true. I hope these are just gangbangers that are rioting and not, like, murdering. Still don't make yourself an easy target. If you decide to go out for whatever reason and make yourself an easy target by being alone, not, protected by military or National Guard, they might seize the opportunity even if they didn't intend to. There is nothing you need that bad in the next 48 hours. If there is, then you got to do what you got to do. But major drug lord El Mencho, moving on to some U.S. news here. This is coming from Fox. Killed in Mexican military operation with U.S. intelligence. Major Mexican drug lord known as El Mencho was killed in a military operation Sunday morning, according to the Defense Department, marking one of Mexico's most significant blows to organized crime amid pressure from President Donald Trump to intensify the crackdown on the cartels. The announcement came as government officials warned of clashes in Jalisco State and widespread criminal activity across the country, prompting the U.S. Embassy in Mexico to issue a shelter-in-place advisory for multiple states. On Sunday, Mexican troops reportedly conducted operations in Chapala, Jalisco, targeting El Mencho, a former police officer who became an elusive leader of the cartel CJNG, major supplier of fentanyl to the United States. Known as El Mencho, he carried a $15 million U.S. bounty and rose to power following the arrest of El Chapo, the former head of the Sinaloa cartel. Over the past 15 years, CJNG has grown from a local criminal group into a global trafficking organization operating out of its stronghold in Jalisco. I've just been informed that the Mexican security forces have killed El Mencho, one of the bloodiest and most ruthless drug kingpins. That was U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. He said that on X. This is a great development for Mexico, the U.S., Latin America, and the world. The good guys are stronger than the bad guys. The Mexican Defense Department said the operation was conducted as part of a bilateral coordination and cooperation with the U.S., whose authorities provided complementary intelligence that contributed to his capture. Probably all of it, to be honest. During the capture, the CJNG ringleader became wounded and died en route to Mexico City. 4 others were reportedly killed at the scene of the shootout between Mexican troops and criminal suspects in Jalisco. It's weird to me that there were only 7, that the leader of this cartel had 7 people with him. That's it. Usually these guys are insulated by an entire town of their cartel. That's what makes it so difficult to get them. because you have to get through the entire town. Now, of course, not difficult for real security forces, but for Mexican security forces, it's difficult. 3 other additional individuals wounded later died. Authorities said they detained 2 members of the criminal organization and seized a range of weaponry, including armored vehicles, rocket launchers capable of downing aircraft, and destroying armored vehicles. Consequently, 3 members of armed forces became injured and receiving treatment. Widespread criminal activity has been reported in Jalisco, the cartel stronghold, as well as in northern regions that serve as key border and transit corridors for the organization. The security cabinet of the government of Mexico noted that multiple buildings were reportedly damaged due to violent incidents, including roughly 20 branches of Banco de Bienestar, a state-run banking institution. At least 21 highways remain blocked, with authorities reporting that 5 have already been reopened. Oh, good for you. Photos show numerous roadblocks and burning vehicles, with dark smoke rising into the sky across the country. Tactics officials say cartels often use to slow or block the military operations. Photos and videos shared with Fox News Digital show thick, dark smoke rising over the skyline of tourist city of Puerto Vallarta on Mexico's Pacific coast in Jalisco. You can see it here. I can't zoom in, but I'm watching the scenes of violence from Mexico with great sadness and concern. It's not surprising the bad guys are responding with terror, but we must never lose our nerve, Landau said. The Mexican National Guard and army units from central Mexico and the state's neighboring Jalisco are currently mobilizing to reinforce security. We remain in code red. We reiterate the recommendation. That's an official state of, terror state, essentially, in Mexico. We reiterate the recommendation to avoid leaving your homes. The clashes are occurring in several federal entities, Jalisco State Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro added. Travel warnings have been issued for Jalisco, including Puerto Vallarta, Chapala, and Guadalajara. Tamaulipas, or whatever it is, including Reynosa and other municipalities, and parts of Michoacan, Guaro, and Nuevo Leon. Due to ongoing security operations and related road blockages and criminal activity, U.S. citizens in the named location should shelter in place until further notice, U.S. Embassy and Consulate said in Mexico. This is the type of situation where I would be perfectly fine with sending in a convoy of whoever, right? Whoever is most appropriate, probably the military since it's foreign soil, to rescue American citizens. And even if it's an overreaction, I don't care. Send them down there, bring our people back across the border, period. Whatever it takes. Especially for something that's so close to home. Don't let them become a target. How much could it possibly be to get a military convoy that is sufficiently large enough to protect itself, nothing else, just protect itself, and carry out people 100 at a time or whatever? The operation against Oswerga follows sustained pressure from the Trump administration on President Claudia Sheinbaum's government, urging Mexico to step up its fight against drug trafficking amid threats and potential intervention. That was weird. Anyhow, let's see. This coming from TMZ. Cartel decimates resort town after leader killed. There you can see the Mexican police or military forces or whatever they are. Clearly not messing around. Is that a HK? I want to know what that is. Let's save that for later. Of course I can't zoom in on it. I'm curious what this gun is right here. It's weird looking. It looks like a DMR setup of an HK, either 416 or an older, whatever those weird ones are called. The weird plasticky ones. Anyway, the notorious Jalisco New Generation Cartel member began ruthless Cartel reportedly began a ruthless attack on Puerto Vallarta, Mexico over the weekend, following the killing of crime organization's leader. Drug kingpin El Mencho was reportedly slain by Army forces Sunday, which unleashed a retaliatory strike, obliterating part of the popular resort town of Puerto Vallarta, with assaults also being launched on Guadalajara International Airport and state of Veracruz, according to local outlets. This came from fairly early this morning, so this might include some false information. They have some related videos here. Let's see what we got. Oh, this definitely isn't related, TMZ.
Oh my god.
Cicely, how old are you turning?
Alex is gonna take
Alright, I'm not sure how these are supposed to be related. Devastating images shared online show buses, churches, and entire blocks engulfed in flames, according to the U.S. State Department. Oh, you know what? Maybe this is the problem. There we go. So there's some of the fires taking place earlier today. And let's see what this other video is here real quick. Devastating images shared online showed buses, churches, and entire blocks engulfed in flames. The U.S. State Department even advised American tourists to shelter in place, according to the Post. Shelter in place. Multiple fires were visible near the Costco store in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico during ongoing security operations. Jalisco Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro said on X, federal forces carried out an operation a few hours ago, which has led to clashes in the area. He also continued, as a result, in various points of the region and in parts of Jalisco, individuals have burned and blocked vehicles with the aim of hindering actions of authorities. These don't really look like trying to hinder the actions of authorities. It seems to be pretty randomized. This seems to just be terror in response to their leader being killed. According to the New York Times, El Mencho was regarded as one of Mexico's most violent criminals. He reportedly gained more prominence after the capture of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Joaquin, or whatever it is. See if there's any interesting comments here. Nope, mostly just nonsense. All right. Let's see. That one's Fox News. Let's see what we have here for the latest from the Mexican website, or the Mexican news rather. President Sheinbaum urges calm after cartel boss's death triggers unrest. President Claudia Sheinbaum urged Mexicans to remain calm and stay well informed after a federal operation targeting the El Mencho leader triggered a violent response from the cartel henchmen. The Federal Defense Ministry said while being transported by air to Mexico City after he was wounded by federal forces during an operation on Sunday morning in the municipality of Tapala, Jalisco. He said he died. Let's see. Secretariat of National Defense reported, this is from Sheinbaum herself on X, reported on the operation carried out this morning by federal forces, which resulted in various blockades and other reactions. There is absolute coordination with the governments of all states. We must remain informed and calm. The social media accounts of the security cabinet provide permanent updates. In the vast majority, we'll check those in a second. In the vast majority of the national territory, activities are proceeding with complete normality. My recognition to the Mexican Army, National Guard, Armed Forces, and Security Cabinet. We work every day for peace, security, justice, and the well-being of Mexico. Fiery narco blockades were erected on roads and highways in Jalisco and neighboring states in response to the operation. Many businesses were also set on fire, including a Costco store. A lot of focus on the Costco store. El Mencho had eluded authorities for years. It wasn't immediately clear whether any lives of innocent people had been lost due to the hostile cartel response. On Sunday, Scheinbaum noted on social media the Defense Ministry had reported on the operation carried out by federal forces on Sunday morning. There is complete coordination with governments of all states. We must remain informed and calm, the president said on social media accounts. Federal government security cabinet replying updates. We already read that. The Federal Security Cabinet on social media said that it was working in coordination with the government of federal entities to respond to any incident. It said the presence of authorities has been strengthened in different parts of the country in order to clear roads and reestablish order. Security Cabinet called on people not to disseminate unverified information and only consult official channels. The priority of the government of Mexico is to protect the population, adding that it will continue to provide information. The Defense Ministry said earlier Sunday that military personnel came under attack during the operation in Tapala, located 130 kilometers southwest of Guadalajara. That's like half that in miles, 65, 70 miles. Is it half or double? I always get that wrong. Let's find out. Yeah, half that. It's about 80 miles. Okay. Yep, nothing new there. All right, so let's see what we can find on X then for the latest information. Of course, a lot of this is going to be in Spanish, so I'm not going to be able to read it. A new workforce led by the U.S. military assisted in the operation in which Mencho died. According to Reuters, Fox, and the Washington Post, a joint interagency task force against cartels played a role. As far as we know, they only played an intel role. The agency, Reuters, citing U.S. officials, explained that this group officially began operating last month with the goal of mapping networks of drug cartel members on both sides of the border between the United States and Mexico. One of the officials stressed that the operation itself was carried out by Mexican forces. The JITFCC, it would have collected detailed information, a so-called target package about El Mencho, collected by law enforcement and intelligence services in the USA, and he would have handed it over to the Mexican government. Jennifer Griffin, Fox News chief national security correspondent, gave a similar version, noting that the U.S. military played a strong supporting role in the operation against El Mencho, but that it was carried out by the Mexican army. Griffin, who cited the official from the United States Defense, indicated that the JITFCC played a role. Regulated works, yada yada. Okay. So that is just confirming then that U.S. intelligence. So this is the problem with going through X, is we got to weed through this a little bit and find out what's what information is useful and what information isn't. But CJNG are furiously taking revenge on Mexican government after El Mencho was assassinated by joint U.S. Strike Force. Nowhere in Mexico is safe right now. It's debated. So far, I'm not seeing much new in the news. Everything kind of seems like it was earlier today. But it's hard to say, right? Things could be really bad right now. We don't know. El Mencho, something, not English. Can't tell what it says. El Mencho was one of these guys too, but today his head was taken by the USA. The cartels are now just getting to know these people. CIA and Green Beret members, who are the Azraels of the cartel. What does that mean? The claiming that the CIA is the head of the cartel? Maybe, who knows? Angel of Death. Ah, no, that makes more sense. Okay. Okay. Probably just clicked on a virus there. I was going to say, let me take it off screen because I don't know what's about to show, but probably just clicked on a virus. Hopefully my computer's smart enough to block it. Anyway, we'll have to check that out after the show, I guess. Doesn't all this cartel violence after the killing of Omencho prove that most of Mexico is corrupt? Good. See if we have any new information. Tourists in Mexico's Port of Vallarta told to shelter in place. U.S. State Department urged American tourists in parts of Mexico to shelter in place on Sunday. Violence erupted across the country. U.S. warned tourists in multiple places. We already have that information. So again, I'm not seeing anything new at the moment. We do have another thread here to look at. Now reportedly targeting and destroying civilian sites across Mexico, killing cartel leaders. These are apparently the places where there are blockades right now. Apparently one of my animals keeps coming in and out of the studio here, and it's very distracting. And no, I'm not calling my kids animals. I think it's actually the dog or the cat. But just following orders, yeah. Death of El Mencho is convenient for the Mexican government because with this new topic, they evade and ignore the issue of Baradora, and sooner or later, Hernandez will fall. Yes, according to reports from sources, official statements from the White House, the United States intelligence, support operation in Tapales, Jalisco, built in the desk of El Mencho. Some facts about the man they just killed. El Mencho started as a small-time criminal in California, got deported, rose to lead the most violent cartel in history, from deportee to drug kingpin, now dead at 58. What is known about the operation? I'm going to put this up on screen for a second so I can do this without people taking screenshots. Nemiso Cervantes, whatever, was the most wanted drug trafficker by the authorities in Mexico and the United States, who had managed to escape multiple operations to capture him for more than a decade. But his luck ended Sunday. El Mencho, the 59-year-old man, was the co-founder of the CJNG organization. U.S. government offered $15 million, while the Mexico sum was the highest in its reward program, $1.75. More recently, Donald Trump's organization designated the CJNG as a terrorist organization. Donald Trump's administration designated the CJNG as a terrorist organization for being a ruthless and violent cartel responsible for trafficking fentanyl, methamphetamines, cocaine, and other illicit drugs. The Mexican authorities offered this Sunday some details of the operation, which took place in cooperation with the U.S. government. For years, it was learned that El Mencho had a protection network in a rural and urban regions of the state of Jalisco in western Mexico, which had kept him free of movement and operation. But an operation led by the Mexican army finally led to its location in the municipality of Tapala. I understand that's probably not right, but that's what I've been saying, so I'm just going to keep saying it. A mountain place about 130 clicks south of the city of Guadalajara. Again, about 80 miles. According to the Secretary of National Defense, Special Forces carried out the operation with support of Air Force aircraft and the Special Immediate Reaction Force. Stand by just 1 second here. No. Mexico Air Force. Last I checked, they had a couple Cessnas. It wouldn't surprise me that maybe they had, like, it's probably just helicopters. I don't even think they have, like, old MiGs like most third world nations do. Like most third world nations do. Let's see what they got. Air Force bases, territorial organization, aircraft, current inventory. They have a Northrop F-5 and a Pilatus PC-7. Supersonic light fighter, the Northrop F-5 supersonic light fighter aircraft, initially designed as a privately funded project in the late 50s by Northrop. There are two main models, the original F-5A and FB Freedom variants. Who knows if those are operational? One is used for training. They have 30 of the Pilatus turbo trainers used for training. Oh, sorry. Put it back up on screen for you. All right, so there's the F-5. There's the turbo trainers. They do have an AWAC, apparently a Brazilian-made AWAC. These are probably the most important planes in the military right now. The fact it's not an American-made one makes it near useless. Do I mean that literally? Not against the cartels. It's probably not useless against the cartels, but it is useless for a military. Only the leading countries. There's a reason every country buys this kind of stuff from America or from Russia or more recently China. Because nobody else makes it. Like, there are some occasional where, like, certain countries in Europe might make a piece that is very important or something like that. But generally speaking, you know, ours are clearly the best in the world. We're able to fly with impunity over pretty much any airspace right now. This might be useful against the cartels. But this is, as I was saying, these are the cornerstone of an Air Force right now, because this is what allows you to fly without having to worry about surface-to-air missiles, which there is nothing you can do to escape a targeted surface-to-air missile except shoot it out of the sky with another missile, which is an option. Deflect it with chaff, although that's like that's a last resort, 10% chance of working sort of thing. I don't know if 10% is accurate, but I know it's a low chance. Because obviously the missile designers tried to allow it to ignore the chaff. And that only works for certain types of missiles too, I believe. You can do either of those two things. The missile itself can fail, which is extremely common when we're not talking about U.S. arms. If it's a Russian, Chinese, or worse, any other country's product, it's got like a 1 in 5 chance of just not working. Maybe not that bad, but a pretty high chance compared to others, whereas U.S. military equipment is like 1 in a million. Often less than that. But this, the only other option is to jam it. It's to prevent their equipment from being able to lock on to your planes and your helicopters and your troops. And you need one of these for that, because you have to be over the area. So they do at least have one. They have 3, apparently, 2 used for maritime patrol. But again, you know, they might work against the cartels, because who knows what kind of Habby Shack setup they got going on. Most likely, though, they don't use anything that's intelligent. They just use dummy rounds that have to be line of sight. And then, yeah, a couple Cessnas. They got a 350 Beechcrafts. I'm not sure. It must be for moving cargo. That would be about the only reason. Oh, no, they don't have 350. They have 2. My bad. Where did I see 350? I don't know. Anyway, oh, the reconnaissance. Okay. 350 is the variant. That's the model. Got you. They have 2 of them for reconnaissance. Bunch of transport aircraft. So this would be for moving supplies and stuff. A few American planes. And then a few, looks like European planes, yep. And then helicopters, they do have quite a few helicopters, it looks like. Although, Most of these are just utility. They have 13 light attack helicopters. Buzzards, basically. Yes, that's a video game name for them, but it is something that most people know it by. And some Blackhawks too, but let's see, a bunch of trainers and 3 UAVs. So I just wanted to see, because it said the Mexican Air Force was overhead, and that just sounded like a joke to me, and it is a joke, basically. All right. Criminals had armored vehicles and strong weapons, including rocket launchers with the capacity to shoot down aircraft, Sedna reported in a statement. During this operation, military personnel were attacked, so in defense their integrity, they repelled the attack, resulting in 4 members of the CJNG criminal group dying at the scene and 3 more seriously injured who lost their lives during their transfer to Mexico City. Osuerga was among the wounded captured and died during the transfer. 2 other members of the CJNG were arrested, while the Army had 3 seriously injured people who were taken to hospitals. There's the guy right there. Sedna also reported the operation had ended with the death of Almencho and had complementary information from the U.S. government. We've already kind of covered that. Since coming to the government in October 2024, Scheinbaum has maintained that she will not allow direct participation in U.S. forces in the country, but has said that coordination without subordination on security and other issues with Washington is welcome. Yeah. The U.S. Anti-Cartel Unit Joint Task Force, we already went over that too. Calabrese pointed to Reuters that there are possibly hundreds of leaders of drug groups, but there are between 200,000 and 250,000 independent contractors who help transport the drugs. According to Pentagon officials, JITFCC has also participated in operations in the Caribbean that have left dozens dead in attacks on vessels. We know that they have been responding with violent attacks. All right. So far, I'm still not finding anything that's new as of later today, which is interesting to say the least. Here's some more video. Keep in mind, so there was people running the airport. Sound effects can be added to these things. What it kind of seems like to me, now they said that they had added roadblocks to the city, and if you look at it here, you can see that there are buses on fire, presumably buses, every so often. And maybe a couple other fires for a distraction. But it seems to me that this is less retaliatory and maybe more what the cartel members were supposed to do if the military ever came to town. Because it seems to me that they did this and then just stopped. Basically, they did this to slow the military and then probably all went into hiding, if I had to guess. I hope that's true. I can't say. I certainly would be damn careful if I was in Mexico myself, but the number of detainees in BC rises to 19 amid reactions to the death of Almencho. No injuries reported, so they've arrested some more people, basically. Midnight in Mexico, and the streets are still burning. Almencho's death sent shockwaves through CJNG. Power vacuums don't fill peacefully. The confirmation of Almencho's death has triggered retaliatory actions by the cartel, with road blockade shootouts and 14 people killed in various regions of Mexico, including Jalisco, Michoacan, or whatever, and Guanajuato. According to reports from authorities and media outlets such as CNN and El Paz. Cartel violence erupts Puerto Vallarta, scenes from Puerto Vallarta. So these are from earlier today as well. A lot of burning. We can see here some... Oh, God, the sound effects. I don't know if this video is from today or if this is from some of the previous, but... You can see they didn't shoot the random people, so that's cool. But then they do set fire to this place. Unfortunately, homeboy doesn't light himself on fire. Yeah, we definitely don't need to hear that music again. ALLAN couldn't listen to Blackpink's newest album. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico is reportedly experiencing severe cartel-related violence following the confirmation that ALLAN was killed. See what's going on. So, again, it was said that these were mostly guys on motorcycles and stuff. It seems to me that most likely these guys were supposed to go out and make a distraction, essentially, to slow the military and then probably go into hiding. That is most likely, from what we've seen so far, that is most likely the case. Alright, I think we're going to move off this pretty soon because I'm not finding anything new here of interest. It doesn't look like, you know, we're getting some reports that some things are still burning and stuff. Maybe things are really bad right now, and that's part of what's going on. But it's impossible to say. Here is, ooh, I'm going to turn that down. This is a store burned down by the cartel members earlier.
Vámonos. Vámonos. Válgame. Vámonos. Vámonos. Válgame.
All right, let's check this other thread here real quick. Mexico. Stepping up the government's war. You come to Mexico just to commit crimes. They can never hide their fascist vibe. Okay.
Developing news from Mexico, violence erupted today after the government said it killed the nation's most wanted cartel boss. It happened in the coastal state of Jalisco. The man known as El Mencho was widely considered one of Mexico's most violent criminals. So what do you know about that?
Well, Tom, a defense official tells CBS News a Pentagon task force played a supporting role, but emphasized it was a Mexican government operation. That task force, which works to counter cartels, has shared intelligence with the Mexican military in the past. Amid sporadic violence, multiple airlines have canceled flights to Puerto Vallarta today, and at least one turned around amid the unrest. It's unclear when operations will restart. We spoke to a passenger who arrived in Houston on the last flight out of the resort area and described the mayhem at the airport.
They closed the door and they start hear the people yelling and screaming and they're running everywhere. I feel safe now, but I'm still shaking because I can't believe this has happened to us. I never thinking one thing like this is going to happen. But we're safe, we're home, we're back.
The State Department is closely monitoring the situation, Tom, and the U.S. Embassy in Mexico is telling Americans to shelter in place due to criminal activity in several Mexican states.
All right, Willie James Inman for us tonight at the White House. Willie James, thank you.
All right. So again, we're not really finding any new information here. So I think we're going to move on to some of our other topics, and obviously if anything breaks we will oh yeah, I Can't believe I haven't mentioned that. If anything breaks, we will cut to that, of course. But
and Willie James, we also.
I'm just not seeing anything new here, in particular. Okay, let me regather my my thoughts here. So, oh, yeah, America won hockey in the Olympics first time since the 1980s, so that's cool. There's really no story to tell on that, but it's cool. Yeah. Apparently, it was quite the game. So it's worth checking out. If you have not seen it so far, this isn't translated, so I have no idea what it says. Okay. All right. I know I said I was going to get off it, and then I didn't. You keep thinking there's going to be new information, and there just isn't. This is another video from earlier. I'll play it real quick just because I have it.
Major
Showing a lot
there.
of
Huge flames
devastation
everywhere.
going on.
Another big one over there. Another one directly behind
By the way,
us.
this kind of stuff
We're
happening,
staying at.
not smart to just sit there on the beach.
Pretty much surrounded by
This is when you should be going back to your hotel room, getting on some comfortable clothes,
really intense scene happening here
perhaps
today.
hiding your American
Hopefully we're able
passport,
to get out tomorrow, but the airports are shut down
and
right
figuring
now.
out whether you're going to shelter in place or get the hell out.
Maybe getting involved soon. Power may be cut very soon. So, frankly, guys, the situation's intense. So I don't know if you can see that, but I can see the flames underneath that black smoke.
All right, get off the screen. All right, let me pick one of these videos here to transition us so I can just get out of the Mexico mindset altogether. I actually have some interesting videos here that I'm going to play after the next story. All right, let's do Piers Morgan. I can't stand Piers Morgan. He is just a big, squishy douche. But he's one of those people. It's just about ratings and clicks. I don't like using the term grifter. He's got a job to do, fine. But occasionally, just like Bill Maher, broken clock's right a couple times a day. So this was actually a pretty spot-on rant.
$20 million gone. Nike out. Lexus out. Corona out. All because Billie Eilish stood on a stage at the Grammys and said something so spectacularly stupid that even her own record label must have spat out their champagne. But here's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. She's not backing down. Her brother's not backing down. They're both pointing fingers at everyone except themselves. And now she can't even film a commercial without crowds booing her off set. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, why it matters, and why this is about far more than just one pop star having a meltdown. This is about consequence culture finally working both ways. Let's get into it. Right, the Grammys.
So,
February.
do you think that's true? Do you think consequence culture is now finally working both ways, or is that just, political or spin from Piers there? I would like to think that it's true, right? I would like to think that consequence culture actually works both ways, but it really doesn't seem to in most cases. But occasionally you get somebody that is so... Billie Eilish is, 20-some years old? 25, under 25, right? Let me see. Billie Eilish is born 2001. Jesus. That makes her 24. 25. No, she was born December 2001, so she is 24 years old. All right. Problem number one. You're 24 years old. Problem number two. You already come from a decently well-off family. They lived in LA. They seem to be doing just fine. Problem number three. You were famous before you were even an adult. You have never lived as an adult and never will. Problem number 4. We know damn well that your parents, as soon as you started making money, which was before you were 18 and therefore before you had graduated high school, let you put making money for the family in front of high school. And I'm not like calling that out. That's fine. And I'm sure that you have a diploma. But there's a difference between having a diploma and actually having the knowledge. Problem number 5 is even if you had the education, it came from California and surely from a liberal teacher and probably wasn't that accurate anyway. It's just the case right now. That's the only grace that I can give her, though. You've never experienced real life. You have no idea what you're talking about. You are and will be a celebrity who is detached from reality forever. And for people that talk about privilege so much, you literally couldn't have more than being a celebrity. And you're a hypocrite, of course, too. Because did she give up her land? Of course not. And that's the thing. We don't need a lecture from 24-year-old, never been an actual adult, never struggled for anything, Billie Eilish. And also, excellent musician, great talent, dumb as hell. Most people who are great at one particular thing are. It's just the way it is. They know a ton about their craft. But when it comes to other things, they're generally pretty dumb. And when it comes to celebrities, they're extra dumb on top of that because they have no idea what a regular, normal life is like. It's a little different when every single person you come in contact with wants something from you instead of is willing to do something for you. And understand, celebrities have some hardships too. It's hard to get close to people. It's hard to be able to trust anyone. Wah. We all have problems. Those are some of the least problems that you could have. And if you got your head out of your ass, you could actually figure out how to do it. Many celebrities have anyway. Regardless, we certainly don't need lectures from teenage or barely not teenage musicians. We just don't. Especially not when you're wrong. And not willing to stand by your conviction at all. For those who don't remember, right after Billie Eilish made this stupid comment, the original tribe that supposedly owned the land her house is sitting on prior to it being part of the United States offered to take it off her hands for her to assuage her privilege. Last I heard, she hadn't obliged. I'm going to laugh if she does, just because she's so spiraled on this. But I will tell you, Billy, the one thing that you could do to be able to move past this with some respect from most people. Look, you can just keep your head down. You cannot say anything. It'll go away eventually. You'll put out a new album. Fans will like it. Things will move on. You might lose a little bit overall, but it'll be fine. That's one option. But if you want to do what a real human would do to get their credibility back, you would come out and say, that was really stupid of me. I had no idea what I was talking about. I just played to my audience. That's the one thing that we actually want from politicians, famous people, whatever. Just admit you're wrong. It's not hard. It's not hard. And it's perfectly okay to be wrong. But to insult literally the entire country that made you famous incorrectly. I wish she had to give every dollar back. Anyway. All right, now that we got out of the Mexico thing, we got some more funny videos we can go to, and some more interesting ones. But of course, Dave Chappelle there. I want to get into this story. Well, here, I want to play a couple of this guy. So this is a compilation of this guy's videos, and I think he's Icelandic. He's pretty funny though. I'm gonna play a couple of them here, and then we'll go into the story, and we'll play a couple more later because it's pretty long.
In Iceland, you don't have to lock your bike, but I recommend it, otherwise it will be stolen. Being black in Iceland is like being Chinese in Africa. Nobody cares except racists. This is what tourism in Iceland is all about. You come here and sit down, and then you think, why didn't I go to Spain? If being sexy was a crime, I would be in jail for tax fraud. Sometimes when I'm walking to work, I stop here and look at the view and realize I'm going in the wrong direction. And also it's Sunday. There's iced tea, but there's no ice hot chocolate because that's just chocolate. People think rising sea level is because of global warming, but it's not. It's this motherfucker. He's been doing this all day. My girlfriend says she is depressed because of me. It is not true. People all around the world have depression, and they don't even know me. In Iceland, we say, if you kick a man in the balls, he will be in pain for a minute. But if you kiss him on the ballsack, he's gay.
Wouldn't that be you're gay? I don't know. Swing and a miss on that one, at least for me. Maybe it just went over my head. All right, let's turn to President Trump. So, photos released of the shotgun and gas can carried by the man shot and killed in Mar-a-Lago. Guess I kind of led the cart with the horse there. That didn't even make sense, but whatever. Somebody tried to breach Mar-a-Lago today, armed with a shotgun and, as you saw, a can of gas. This is oddly reminiscent of the story that we had about a week ago that made very little sense. Also, where a guy fully armed, he was armed with a loaded shotgun, extra shells, I believe a gas can also, but I might be conflating that. Ballistic plates, helmet, and gas mask. Went into the Capitol building, or tried to approach the Capitol building, and immediately surrendered to the first police officer that he saw. Good. I'm glad nobody was hurt. But generally, people committed enough to put on the gear, load their gun, drive to the Capitol, get out with the gun, and head in. They typically don't give up at the first cop they see. And of course, the story's just gone, in part because nothing ended up coming of it. But is this the same person? Probably not. I would imagine that person's still being held. I would hope they are. I mean, they didn't actually commit a crime, so I'm sure having the gun on Capitol property is illegal. But other than that, they didn't actually commit a crime. Yeah, it's just weird. Nonetheless, this man was in fact shot to death. Palm Beach County Sheriff Office released a photo of the shotgun and gas can carried by a man who was shot and killed by law enforcement at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. Secret Service and a Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office deputy confronted the man after he entered the estate secured perimeter, rather. Looks like we have a video
picture
here.
that the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office shared with us that shows the shotgun and the gas can from the incident. So that's what viewers are looking at now on their screen. Please continue.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And the other important thing is during the press conference, they asked whether or not it was loaded. And it even if the weapon was unloaded, and the public should know this, it's what the law enforcement entity perceives now. Because if you're raising your shotgun and pointing it at me in real time, I don't know if it is or isn't loaded. There's no way for me to know. So I guess in some ways you could say that not that it is
interesting that they make that admission when it comes to like Secret Service shooting somebody. But when a cop shoots somebody that has a gun, you don't hear this kind of take on the news.
Irrelevant.
Not on the left
way
wing.
that it's looked at is what do I perceive in real time in that moment. And so I won't know
Like a
until
car coming at
after
you.
the fact, right? Once I engage a threat, whether or not it is or isn't loaded. So in court, or when it comes to your ability to use force, whether or not it is loaded, it's not going to, as long as you can point to the fact that, hey, this person raised the shotgun, they pointed it at me, I thought they were going to shoot at me, there was imminent threat of my life or bodily injury to myself or to somebody else, maybe somebody standing next to me that I'm with, then at that point, according to use of force, you are allowed to engage. So I think that that's really important, because I do know that that question was asked.
At 1:30
well, let's go with this too.
The
Let's
security
see what else we
detail
got.
detected that a individual had made his way into the inner perimeter of Mar-a-Lago. A deputy and 2 Secret Service agents on the detail went to that area to investigate. They confronted a white male that was carrying a gas can and a shotgun. He was ordered to drop those 2 pieces of equipment that he had with him, at which time he put down the gas can, raised the shotgun to a shooting position. At that point in time, the deputy and the 2 Secret Service agents fired their weapons and neutralized the threat. He is deceased at the scene.
Earlier today, 2
Good deal.
special agents from the Secret Service and a deputy from the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office were involved in an
And then they
officer-involved
woke up
shooting
that sheriff
while
from his nap.
responding to an armed individual at one of the gates at Mar-a-Lago. Preliminary information indicates that the individual was armed with a shotgun in a possession
Okay,
of a
you're just
gasoline.
repeating what the other guy said. All right, nothing on that one. So this is an interesting detail that I caught just before I got on the air here. Family of the man, 21 years old, that was shot dead by police in Mar-a-Lago expresses disbelief. We are big Trump supporters, all of us. Does that mean their kid is? No, but it's interesting nonetheless. FBI named 20-year-old Austin Tucker Martin as the suspect who was shot dead by Secret Service agents at Trump's Florida residence. Let me go ahead and search that name real quick. Austin Tucker Martin. I don't usually like using the names, although this kid didn't accomplish anything, so I'm not particularly worried about it. I'm going to check too. Let me take this off screen for just a second. Let's check X and see. Usually if there's social media posts and stuff, we can get them on X. Would-be Mar-a-Lago shooter was fixated on Epstein files. Likely was also a Massey supporter. That's probably speculation, but that is apparently a picture of the suspect, although take that with a grain of salt because obviously people frequently screw that up. I also take the Massey thing with a grain of salt so far. If I see something that verifies that, I'll mention it, but these are allegedly texts from him. I'm not sure who to. It doesn't say. But it says, I'm glad you are benefiting. I don't know if you read up on the Epstein files, but evil is real and unmistakable. The best people like you and I can do is use what little influence we have, tell other people about what you hear about the Epstein files and what the government is doing about it, raise awareness. Hey, where are you? Okay. That's apparently a text message to a friend of some sort. Let me see what the note is on this. Another picture of him, so it could be a note that... shoot. No verified evidence. Person is a Trump supporter or Republican yet. Reports state that he came from a family of Trump supporters and he himself was afraid of guns. But Op, who made this post, says it's straight claiming everybody. Yeah. All right. Not finding anything useful so far. Newly uncovered text messages from Austin Tucker Martin. This comes from Right Angle News Network. 21-year-old who attempted to break into Mar-a-Lago while armed suggests he was potentially influenced by mainstream narratives and conspiracy theories surrounding the Epstein case. Sources who worked with Austin at Pine Needles Lodge and Golf Club in North Carolina tell TMZ that he became fixated on Epstein following the latest release of information tied to the files. Coworkers tell us he was deeply disturbed by what he believed was a government cover-up and often talked about powerful people getting away with it. The cousin of Austin Tucker Martin, the armed man killed at Mar-a-Lago, described Martin as quiet, afraid of guns, and from a family of avid Trump supporters. Brennan Fields, Martin's cousin, reacted with disbelief. He described Martin as quiet, afraid of guns, and from a family of Trump supporters. He's a good kid, Fields, 19, said. He's a good kid, Fields, who is 19, said. He said they grew up together. I wouldn't believe he would do something like this. It's mind-blowing. He said Martin worked at a local golf course and would send money from each paycheck to charity. He wouldn't even hurt an ant. He doesn't even know how to use a gun. That his cousin didn't discuss politics. We are big Trump supporters, all of us, everybody, Field said, but his cousin was real quiet, never really talked about anything. Sounds like maybe you didn't know your cousin then. Who knows? Made a memorial where Austin passed away, if anyone wants to show their respects. Don't make a martyr out of this guy. If you're an Epstein Files person, don't make a martyr out of this guy. This will not accomplish anything. And believe me, well, you don't have to believe me, but I'll speculate that if the Trump administration actually had information in those files that they could use to take down anybody on the left, forget everybody else for a second, just anybody on the left that went after him, tried to kill him, stole an election, yada yada, regardless of what you believe, that's what Trump believes. You don't think he would use it? The fact is, in all the files that have come out, we know some people partied with him. We can speculate that there were underage people at these parties, but we can't prove it. We can only speculate it. All of the pictures you see of random, people that are in the Epstein files with Epstein or with clearly underage girls, those are fake. Everyone that I have ever seen is fake. Most of them pretty obviously, but some of them are fairly real looking. But there's a lot of allegations that were made, many of whom the person who made the allegation wouldn't even put their name down. The people that have gone on record as victims of Epstein himself claim that they'll make a list of other people implicated, but nobody has yet. Nobody has introduced it yet. And most likely because they're afraid of being sued. Now look, if you have some way to verify that your list is real, if you're one of the victims and your only concern is being sued because you can't technically prove it, I don't think I would worry about that personally. Because the chances you're going to get a jury to accept a settlement against you for whatever it is, libel or whatever, speech, written, right, whichever is whichever, but it's pretty slim. It's very unlikely that a jury will actually do that. So release the list. Many have claimed they're going to, none of them have. The only thing that we know for sure, based on at least all the files we have, and I've said this the last several episodes, is that Trump didn't break the law with Epstein, not regarding minors in any way. He is the only person in the Epstein files, meaning somebody that was associated with Epstein. And remember, the whole theory here is that Epstein's job was for intelligence agencies as a honeypot to get people compromised by forcing them to sleep or tricking them to sleeping with underage girls. That's the whole theory. Trump is the only person who never contacted him after he was charged with whatever in 2006. Trump is the only person that had a public falling out with him, kicking him out of Mar-a-Lago because of his creepy behavior towards an underage girl, a waitress at Mar-a-Lago. Again, I've said it many times. That would be par for the course if Donald Trump was hanging out with him to sleep with underage girls. Why would he have this public falling out? This is years before Epstein ends up being charged. So it's not as if anyone's looking at Epstein and so Trump's like, oh, I need to publicly distance myself. Nobody had ever heard the word Epstein. This was in the 90s when they had a falling out. Also, we know that Trump is the only person to help the prosecution against Jeffrey Epstein without having to be forced, without having to be subpoenaed. Prosecutor himself said Trump is the only person that took my call, did not require me to get a subpoena, and told me he will give me anything I need. And we know that all of the victims that are on record were asked on national TV by a leftist news host who is very anti-Trump. Are you or anybody you know, each one of them was asked this, aware of the president, meaning Donald Trump, and she specifically said the president, Donald Trump, involved with underage girls with Epstein in any way? They all said no. I don't know what else. He clearly hung out with Epstein many, many, many years before, in the 80s, early 90s maybe, up until the falling out at Mar-a-Lago, whenever that was exactly. But Trump hung out with a lot of people back then that liked to party. That's what Trump did. As far as the rest of the people, you don't think if there was clear evidence on Clinton, Trump would use it? If there was clear evidence on anybody, Comey, anybody from the Biden administration, the Obama administration, the Clinton orbit, of course he would. And should. Of course, he should use it no matter who it's against. But see, this is the problem with releasing this information like they did. And do I think the information should have been released? Yes. The problem is, by the time it was on Trump to do, this was never going to go well either way, so I'm not sure that it was smart for Trump to release it. Now, he didn't have much choice after Bondi's dumbass said the files are on my desk. Why she hasn't been fired, I don't understand. But, 4 administrations, 20 plus years, rather, of FBI, CIA, NSA agents being able to sift through the files. Who knows how many political operatives, how many hands have been in those files. And like I said, the idea that the federal government would ever collect damning evidence against itself for any reason other than destroying it is just ignorant as shit to believe. It just is. The FBI did not raid Epstein's Island to collect evidence. They raided the island to scrub it of evidence. Just like they did with, what's his name? The Trump shooter. The one that actually hit him. I mean, in the ear, but I can't remember the kid's name. But we know that after the FBI left, that house had been scrubbed. All the silverware was gone. Any potential contact surface, DNA surface, all gone. His toothbrush, all gone. It wasn't to collect evidence. They don't need 57 copies of his fingerprint. They had the body. They had the body with the gun. Same thing with JFK, MLK, and even fucking aliens. And then, of course, you also have the, well, would this many people be able to keep a secret? Not if there was actually something damning. If there was actually a smoking gun in those files, somebody would have said something. Certainly when it comes to like JFK, MLK, it's been many years long enough that anybody that had access to those before they were released, had they seen something, one way or another, it would have gotten out, for sure. The government's not going to collect evidence on itself. It's just not. And it's certainly not going to hold on to it for keepsakes so that it can be FOIA'd or forced declassified after 25 years. But anyway, what I was saying was the problem with releasing those files was you have so many people that don't understand how an investigation works. And so they're taking every accusation, every piece of the investigation as like literal fact, when most of it is useless information from entirely unverified or already verified as uncredible sources. Things that people made up, dreams that people had. People that called the FBI tip line and said, you know, back when I was in college, my roommate told me this crazy story about how Bill Gates and 2 aliens took her out on a fishing boat. Who was your roommate? I don't remember. What's your name? Yeah, I'd rather not say. And then you also have reports like the lady, I forget her name, but that filed a lawsuit claiming a bunch of allegations very specifically against Trump that were investigated. And they discovered this person's been in and out of the mental hospital since long before these allegations supposedly date back to. And they have absolutely no, like, if you claim that you were sex trafficked from the age of 10 to 15, let's say. But we know you went to high school every day from the age of 10 to 15. You weren't sex trafficked. And look, I'm not saying that nobody ever sex trafficked anywhere, ever went to school while being sex trafficked. That's not what I'm saying. But generally speaking, that wouldn't be the case. My point is, if we can tell that, you know, your story doesn't match, we know it's not credible. That was the case with that particular woman. I don't know the exact details, so I can't tell you exactly why. I just know that if it was credible, the Biden administration would have used it when they were trying to prosecute Trump for January 6th and everything else they tried to go after him for. When they were helping New York go after him for overinflating the value on Mar-a-Lago. Or for, what's her, Jean whatever. The Obama administration. Why wouldn't the Trump administration get rid of the documents during the first administration? It's all ridiculous. Like, nobody puts these thoughts, and the fact that so many people all of a sudden care. Now, I understand. Conservatives have cared the whole time. I get it. We've cared since, most of us have cared since Obama. I want people to be brought to justice. I do. But they've already cleaned up the Epstein thing. You need to figure out who's doing it now. The Epstein thing's already cleaned and done. He's dead. You might be able to get somewhere with Maxwell. And I also think that it took on a life of its own. There were things that even I believed that I didn't realize there wasn't actually as much evidence for. Like the whole, you know, he's a genius mastermind sex pot thing. He clearly slept with underage women. He himself was clearly a pedophile. He was also wealthy and well-connected. There is also some question about where his money came from. I think that, what's his name? I can't remember his name offhand. It'll come to me in a second. But I think his theory on that is spot on, which was basically that he was I can't remember I don't want to say the wrong thing. As soon as it comes to me, I'll tell you so you can check out what he says about it. But basically that he was some sort of government asset, sort of, and that he probably made his money shadily. And that he himself was definitely a pedophile. And surely he probably knew somebody else that was too. But that the majority of people he hung out with were not to trick them into sleeping with underage girls or anything. Prostitution? Sure. Child sex slave parties? There's no evidence of that. And I'm not saying that it can't be true. It could be because, again, the government would scrub that information if it was true. But realistically, there's nothing that backs that up in any way. The only thing that we have sufficient evidence for to make the claim is that Jeffrey Epstein himself was a pedophile. He definitely abused some girls. And it's possible that some of the people that were close to him, at least in those later years when he was doing it on a near daily basis in Florida, long after Trump stopped talking to him, by the way, probably at least had suspicions, if not reason to believe it. But there's a huge difference from what we believe and what we can prove. And in this country, that matters. Go after people for what they are doing today. And stop trying to rehash this over and over and over. It's too late. It was too late when the FBI raided his island and nobody was on top of it. It was too late by the day Obama left office, because he was the one who was in office when they raided the island. and then it carried over into the Trump administration, but the FBI was doing that on its own as the administrations were changing hands. So it wasn't like something that Trump all of a sudden took over. The FBI operates independently, generally speaking. Certainly during transitions like that. You can tell me your opinion, jbu@usa.com. Of course, you can leave a comment under the show on Rumble or x.com/jbu_show. That's where I'm at with it, though. Like, we're not going to get anywhere good from trying to rehash this and rehash this. Look for people that are guilty now. Number 5 overall pick, Austin Martin. Why he... Oh, apparently there's a Blue Jays player with the name Austin Martin. That's unfortunate, for today at least. There's a very real possibility the latest attempted Trump assassin, Austin Martin... going back to the Massey thing. It's possible, but it's not like Massey ordered him to do it. And according to a proposed community note, at least, no evidence links him to Representative Massey at all. Outspoken about his Christian faith, political views, totally regularly express support for Trump. That was not claimed by his cousin. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I see that a lot of conservatives are trying to tie him to Massey. Look, I think that Massey should be replaced in Congress. I understand why he sticks to his principles, and I respect that. But as I've said many times, you're not sticking to your principles if you are overall stopping progress toward the right thing being made. I'm not saying that you compromise everything. What I'm saying is, it's one thing to refuse to vote for a spending bill that its ultimate goal is just to increase the spending. It's just a Trojan horse to increase spending overall, like the Democrats frequently pass. It's another thing to refuse to pass a spending bill that keeps spending at the same or even slightly higher, because we know the same means slightly higher every year for Congress. If that money is now being used to do things like implement tariffs that ultimately are going to help correct the budget in the future. Now, look, I wish Congress was a lot harder on the budget too, Massey. But the fact is, you guys aren't. You don't have enough people. And so just refusing to vote for anything that your constituents want on the principle that I can't vote for anything if it increases the debt, that's not a principled stance. That's just a stupid stance. If we can get the SAVE Act, even though we haven't cut the debt, you still need to vote in the SAVE Act. If we can get deportations done, even though it means spending a significant amount of money this year, let's get the deportations done. We can argue about the money separate from the deportations. But the fact is, we've already accepted the fact that it's going to cost money to get these people out of the country. But a big part of the reason that the debt is going so high so fast is because we have 40 million people here, both legally and illegally, that are on the government dole that shouldn't be. And so maybe spending a little bit of money up front to get rid of them, either through deportation or just getting them off the government dole, I don't literally mean get rid of them, is a good idea. So I get it. I get why, the MAGA guys want, the MAGA only guys want Trump gone, or Massey gone, rather. Sorry. I think he should be voted out too, because I think he's making stupid decisions despite and decisions that really spite his principles, even though he thinks he's making them for principled reasons. But this isn't the way. This is what progressives do. This kid is who this kid is. He's probably just a crazy. And unless we have a reason to believe that he was being run like the other kid was, the one that tried to shoot Trump, then let's not do this nonsense. It doesn't matter what he believed, who he supported. If he was a Trump supporter and was, just overindulged in the Epstein file stuff, doesn't matter. And yes, it does matter if it's a Democrat. And the reason it matters if it's a Democrat is because the Democrats openly call for violence all the time. That's different. That is significantly different. Republicans just simply don't do that. Yes, Trump uses inflammatory language, but he doesn't call for violence. And he never has either, by the way, except for against like Iran and stuff. But not against Democrats or liberals. Anyway, rant over. I don't know if there's anything else really to cover as far as this shenanigans goes. We were supposed to welcome Facebook today, but for whatever reason, it just refuses to connect. I don't know if I need to do some sort of verification there that I haven't completed or something. I thought I had it all set up, but we will be streaming to Facebook soon, by the way. Still, watch on X and Rumble, please, because they don't censor us. That is the place to be for sure. And don't forget to like and follow the show. It helps us in the algorithms, of course, helps us with sponsors, and helps me be able to do this show at more consistent times and make a better show for you guys. Right now, I'm doing everything myself. When you guys pay me enough to hire somebody to do some of this, we'll get some. We'll get some jokes in here, some better production value, all that good stuff. Anyway, I saw, so there's a post here, hang on, it was comparing him to a couple people. Austin Tucker, 21, rural town, North Carolina, 0 personal social media. That's probably not true. It was probably just scrubbed. He was listed as a missing person, apparently, at a Carthage, North Carolina. Last seen February 21st, 7:51 p.m. Drives a 2013 silver Volkswagen Tiguan or whatever those are called. Approximately 6 foot tall, lives in the Carthage, North Carolina area. So that must have been, he must have just not come home and went down to Mar-a-Lago, I guess. Pretty far drive. No Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X, nothing at all. Again, probably just scrubbed. Only trace is a tiny professional art account called Green Illustrator 11 for his one-man pen and ink business. No personal post, no friends tag, completely blank. His sister Caitlin, who is also 21, died in a car crash back in 2023. Unfortunate. There's no obituary, but no memorial pages or tributes anywhere. Well, he just died, so calm down. His brother Jacob and both parents, they are total digital ghosts, allegedly. Yesterday, his aunt posted that he is missing. Today, he turns out to be the guy who breached Mar-a-Lago. This is the second time in 2 years we have seen a young guy around 20 or 21 with almost 0 digital footprint make an attempt on Trump's life, exactly like Crooks. That was the guy I was trying to think of earlier from Butler. In the age where everybody overshares everything, how does an entire young family just not exist online at all, especially after losing a daughter and sister? It's weird that his family's not on there, although they've obviously learned a lot, through this time as far as taking these pages down and all that stuff. Wow, glad I don't have that shared on here. Anyway, they've learned a lot doing that, and so they're a lot faster at it and all these things, but let's see.
Another thing.
Now, this is just a random live streamer like me, so keep that in mind based on whatever claims they're about to make here.
Sad and interesting about this family is there's 3 siblings, there's 2 brothers. They look to
He claims to be national security analyst and former U.S. Air Force intel.
be maybe the same age or twins. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know. I think this is him, and this would be his brother. And yes, they do look like twins. The army thing is interesting.
And a sister, and the sister's a couple years older, and that sister was killed in a car wreck 2 years ago at the age of 21. So now this family is dealing with 2 killed children, and the other son, I think, is in the Army, the U.S. Army right now.
Yeah.
So
there's actually a lot there that you found. He would have had to have known that he would lose his life doing this, reaching the president's home, given the current climate.
You should certainly assume it. Not a lot of information there. I guess you can check out that show, the Aaron Mullen show. You can check out that show if you want to see what they found out there. But yeah, there's not enough information here yet. We don't really know much else besides what we've already covered, and I'm not seeing anything else here. All right, let's move on to something else, since we are at a dead end here too. Man, that's 2 stories today that just kind of stopped. I guess in the meantime here, we can listen to Mr. Iceland a
They
little
say
more.
there are no trees in Iceland, but I'm actually in Italy right now, but we still have
Sorry,
them,
guys.
just smaller and fewer. In Iceland, it is acceptable to drink and drive, as long as it is not on the same day. In 2005, we built a mall here in Iceland, but as you can see, we do not have enough people for a mall. We should have just built a store.
Nobody does, bud.
In America, they say that if you're not ready to do the time, don't commit the crime. But in Iceland, we just say, don't do the crime. Because nothing rhymes with glæpur. They say that the average erect gorilla penis is approximately 4 centimeters. And I thought maybe we should give starving children food before we measure gorilla dicks. There's a saying in Iceland: if there's fog, you're not able to see as far. In Iceland,
if there's fog, you're not able to see as far. Those are some excellent insights, of course, no matter where you live. All right. There was a very interesting science video that I wanted to share. And I'm trying to decide really if I want to share the whole thing or not. But it shares a very interesting perspective, both on science and the Bible. So I think we'll play the whole thing. It is quite fascinating, and it's simple physics. So physics are something, I've said it many times on the show, that have always been beyond me. I know little bits and pieces, but it's just one of those things that has always been very hard for me to wrap my head around. Regardless, this video breaks it down fairly easy. The original video, here, I'll just show you the clip real quick because I'm not finding the original video yet. It was posted in the comments of it earlier, but I'm gonna have to look it up, it looks like. Give me 1 second here. Thing world demonstrate provided. Okay. Um, I'm just gonna have to look up the institute. Oh wait. Is it right here? So anyway, the clip of the original clip here, the short clip, it's one of those things where they're like, oh, look at this, you were never taught, and there's this magic science and stuff. It's not. There's simple explanations for these things. I can give you some of them. It's certainly the one that is most pointed to here. But the post says, they taught you electricity was just wires and connections, nothing more. But there was a hidden power, one they never told you about. Tesla understood it. He exposed it. And that's why they silenced him. Electricity was never just energy. It was control. It was consciousness. Something never meant for the masses. What that awakened isn't in the textbooks. It's not taught in schools. And you'll never see it on the news. The truth is there. But first, you have to learn how to see it. Nothing is what it seems. Do you dare to question what you have been taught? The truth of the world? So, the real video is actually far more interesting. So they take a clip from it to make it look like, oh, this guy's showing secret science, right? But the real video is actually very interesting. To the best that I can tell, everything that is demonstrated in the video is a legit property of physics. Things that I'm already well aware of. And I'll show you here in a second. Now, they relate this to some explanations in the Bible. And the actual full video is basically showing how physics and science do line up with biblical teaching. Now, you can take that for what it's worth or what it's not worth, but I actually found the real video quite interesting and compelling, both from a science perspective and from a religious perspective. But let's go ahead. Let me show you first. So this is just the clipped version where they try and make it seem like secret science.
The ring being in effect a one-turn shorted secondary. A smaller ring will react even more violently. Here is another ring. This one made of a material we say is non-conductive. And it is completely unaffected. Here is another example. Several thousand watts of power were involved in that spark. If we replace the spark gap with a copper coil, the same power now flows through the coil. It's invisible.
There's nothing secret or magic
on many
here.
substances.
This is called induction.
A lot of heat. Wood,
you might have an induction stove in your home.
Things that we think of as being quite inflammable are not affected at all. However, a piece of steel wool bursts into flame instantly. Did you ever fry an egg on a cold stove? It's no trick at all.
So as you can see, he's about to demonstrate induction cooking. I'm going to cut that because we're going to watch the full video here. Because I find that actually compelling. But I just wanted to show you, when you clip things out of context like this and don't grasp basic principles, yeah, it looks, with the music behind it and stuff, but it's just dumb. Like, if you are a younger generation out there and you see these videos and you think, oh my God, the whole world is not as it seems. It's not. No, I mean, it is. Whatever. The world is as it seems. Mostly. Politicians are mostly just stupid and incompetent. Bad people are usually just bad people. Good people are usually just good people. Most people are not nearly as capable or smart as they make themselves out to be. And shit like this is very simply explained stuff. As we'll see here in a minute, when I find the full video. Give me just a second. Of course, I should have saved it, and I didn't. Let me see if I still have it open on my phone, because that would be faster. Of course I don't. Why would I do that? That would just be silly. Alright, doo-doo. Oh, I remember what it is. Okay. Alright. Oh, here's the whole thing. Apparently the whole thing is a lot longer than I thought, so we're not gonna watch the whole... We're not gonna watch the whole of it. I thought... I guess I bookmarked it. Well, if I bookmarked it, then where the hell is it? Right there. Duh. I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit, and if we need to slow down at parts, I will. But that way we can watch a little bit more.
Recent discoveries in modern science have brought the age of materialism to an end. Today, the thorough atheist is hard to find, a rare bird indeed. The enemy of true faith today is not atheism, not total unbelief, but partial belief. For some reason, many people seem to have two kinds of faith. One they reserve for values they consider absolute. 2 times 2 equals 4, the law of gravity. And then a so-called religious faith, which is almost a retreat from fact into a realm of fantasy. They seem to have 2 compartments in their brain. They keep their science on one side, their religion in the other, with a wall between them. They're afraid to remove the wall, fearing that their faith will be swept away by fact and hard reality. To say the least, such a faith lacks honest conviction. Only a faith that is founded on truth can survive and provide the bulwark so necessary for a nation or an individual. Say, did you ever see 1,000,000 volts of high-frequency electricity? What has that to do with faith? Nothing, if our faith is just a retreat from fact. But if our faith is founded on fact, then the 1,000,000 volts and everything here in the laboratory has a vital connection. Let me show you what I mean. In the 3rd chapter of John's Gospel, we read about a man named Nicodemus. He came to Jesus one night and said, "We know that thou art a teacher come from God. No man can do these miracles that thou doest except God be with him." Jesus answered and said unto him, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." Now, to say the least, that's a very startling statement. Does it apply to physical birth? Well, that's what Nicodemus wanted to know. He asked, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? Jesus answered, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, that is truly, truly, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God." And then to further explain his meaning, he said, "That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, you must be born again. The wind bloweth where it listeth, thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh, nor whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit." There are 3 basic facts.
So I know it's when he's reading from the Bible, it's going very quickly. Don't worry about it. He's going to explain what exactly you were supposed to take out of that. Now look, if you're not religious or don't believe or whatever, that's fine. Just watch this for the scientific value, because it is still fascinating from the scientific aspect as well. But he makes a compelling case, and one that makes me wonder, why did this kind of religious teaching stop? This was very popular as chemistry was being discovered, as physics was being discovered, as we were making these major discoveries in the 20th century, which have all but ceased seemingly these days. Granted, things have gotten harder, and that's part of why, but you don't see this kind of connection between religion and real world anymore. And that's very odd. Anyway.
What we have just read. First, there are two worlds or realms, the physical and the spiritual. Second, one of these, the spiritual realm, cannot be seen or known by the physical senses alone. And third, before we can see or enter this spiritual realm, a change must take place in us that is so fundamental and far-reaching that it can best be described as new birth. Do you believe this? A few years ago, it was quite popular to say, I will believe nothing that I cannot see or handle or know with my physical senses. Today, this attitude is considered quite unscientific. Much of modern science deals with very real quantities and qualities that are beyond the range of the physical senses. Do you realize that your most priceless possession is something that you can't see, weigh, or measure? It is possible today to determine the exact chemical composition of a human body. By precise measurements, we can know how much iron, calcium, phosphorus. We can determine exactly how much of each of the elements is present in a body. If we were to make these tests one moment before death, and then again one moment after death, it would be obvious that something was missing. But it would be something that you couldn't see, weigh, measure, or put in a test tube. That something is life. This isn't me. This is just the house I live in. Cut off my hand, that isn't me. Cut off my arm, that isn't me. Of course, if you keep on whittling, you'll get me, I'll admit that, but nevertheless, this is just the house I live in. Whatever it is, that is really you or me is something that no man has ever seen. Modern chemical science can do some wonderful things. I suppose that today a good chemist in a well-equipped laboratory could make an egg.
Smoking is good for you, kids.
It would be the exact duplicate of a chicken egg. It would look like one, leave it around long enough, it would smell like one. But you could put that thing under a hen for all eternity and it wouldn't hatch. You see, science can't put a chicken in the egg. That brings us to the old question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Some will say, well, obviously the chicken, or where did the egg come from? Others, the egg, or where did the chicken come from? Push that question as far as you want into the ages past, but you can't possibly escape the ultimate answer that God came first. And immediately, here in that other realm. One of the most intriguing discoveries in modern science is the fact that there is nothing in this world that even approaches what might be called truly solid. We speak of solids, liquids, and gases. But these terms describe superficial rather than basic properties of matter.
Now this, what he's about to explain, and I'm going to explain it in a little further detail because he does go over it very quickly, is this is the part of physics that was hardest for me to kind of fundamentally wrap my head around. So I'll let him explain it, and then I'll explain a little more, at least in the way that I understood it.
All matter, regardless of its state, is composed of invisible particles called atoms, which in turn are composed of other particles. The air we breathe, though invisible to us, is just as real as wood or metal, because it's made of the same fundamental particles. It is the arrangement of these particles and the forces that bind them together that give to a substance its special properties. Air, for example, is composed mainly of oxygen and nitrogen atoms. Now, if we remove the nitrogen atoms and replace them with helium atoms, this new atmosphere will have some of the properties of air, but there will be some obvious differences. For one thing, sound travels faster through a light gas than through a heavy one. And of course, helium is much lighter than nitrogen. I'm going to fill my lungs with this gas now and see if you notice any difference.
I'm now speaking in just the same tone of voice that I've been using all along. The difference, you notice, is due to the fact that my lungs are now filled with a helium-oxygen mixture, which is lighter than air. And of course, my voice goes up, but now I've got to take a breath.
And as I do, my voice goes down one step toward normal. But now, my voice returns to normal. Say, if you want to have some fun sometime, get one of your friends who prides himself on being a rugged he-man and fill him up with this stuff and then get him to quote Mary Had a Little Lamb. Believe me, the results are amazing. If we bring a piece of steel close to a magnet, we say that the steel becomes magnetized.
This is the part, right?
But what is it that actually happens? If we place the steel inside a coil of wire connected to a high-gain amplifier, and then bring the magnet close to the bar of steel, we can hear something that suggests movement inside the steel. Listen.
It is quite fascinating.
We think of a piece of steel as being solid, and according to our definition, it is a solid. But the popular concept of what makes a solid is certainly a false one. This piece of steel, and any so-called solid substance on this earth, is almost entirely empty space. If we could eliminate the empty space in this piece of steel, all that would remain would be a tiny bit of matter, so small as to be invisible even with a high-power microscope. This concept of almost unlimited empty space within matter is comparatively new, but...
So, that sounds insane. And I'll let him finish his... Well, let me let him finish his explanation here.
It is the very cornerstone of our knowledge in this atomic age. Atoms are not solid. Instead, they are tiny solar systems composed of infinitely small particles revolving at tremendous speeds and bound together by enormous forces. And like our solar system, atoms are almost entirely empty space. For the moment, let's forget the forces within the atom. Thinking only of the particles and the empty space around them, science knows no reason why I couldn't take this so-called solid steel bottle and just throw it right on through that wall. Except this, we've tried it and it hasn't worked. If I were to attempt to run through that wall right now, all I'd get for my trouble would be a good-sized lump on the head. But that which would prevent my body passing through the wall would not be a collision of particles, but rather a collision of forces. The same forces that make an atom bomb. And if it were not for these forces, my body could go freely back and forth through that wall, just as though it were not there.
Oh.
We're not there.
Okay. So hang tight on that for just a second. Pull this image up here. So this is what he's talking about. This is a picture of an atom, right? And it's made up of your nucleus at the center and then all of your protons and electrons. And again, this is not my area of science. From the molecule up, I've got a pretty decent understanding. Atomic level, I'm pretty iffy on. But what he's explaining is the smaller you go, the less actual physical stuff is there. This would represent one, let's see, would it be it would be one atom, yeah, of aluminum. But inside that atom of aluminum, it's mostly protons and electrons. And it's the forces he's discussing would be magnetism, gravity, things like that. Those would be the forces involved. But what he's saying is if you were to take away all of the empty space at the atomic level from all of this stuff, the amount of aluminum you would have left from that bar would be microscopic. I don't know if that's entirely true based on modern estimates, but I do know that that concept is correct. What is holding all of those atoms of aluminum together? Why do I feel like I'm missing a... Yeah, what's holding all the atoms of aluminum together, the forces that are, it is mostly empty space, basically, is what he's trying to explain. That might have been obvious to you. For me, it took a while to explain.
It is within the realm of scientific possibility that there could be two worlds coexistent, occupying the same part of space at the same moment of time, each world just as real as the other, with its mountains, valleys, rivers, trees, and people. And that one world could pass freely through the other world, neither world being conscious of the existence of the other world, if you grant just one thing: atomic forces within the material substance of these two worlds that are not mutually interactive. What do we mean by this? Let's see. Here are two pieces of steel. Their appearance is quite similar, but a magnet will reveal a basic internal difference between the two pieces. This one, of course, is picked up, but this one is unaffected. This piece of steel is non-magnetic, stainless steel. Of course, we all know that other metals, such as brass or aluminum, are not affected by the magnet. But a ring made of aluminum is something else. It can be suspended in air by the electromagnetic force of what is actually a transformer. The ring being in effect a one-turn shorted secondary. A smaller ring will react even more violently. Here is another ring. This one made of a material we say is non-conductive. And it is completely unaffected. Here is another example. Several thousand watts of power were involved in that spark. If we replace the spark gap with a copper coil, the same power now flows through the coil. It's invisible, has no effect on many substances, but it can generate a lot of heat. Wood, paper, things that we think of as being quite inflammable, are not affected at all. However, a piece of steel wool bursts into flame instantly. Did you ever fry an egg on a coal stove? It's no trick at all, if you have the right equipment. This is a cold hot plate.
I love the 40s.
And because it's cold, you can make it out of wood, if you like. Just be sure that there's a coil of wire inside and that you connect that coil to a high voltage alternating current source. The rest is easy. As long as we're being different, we'll use motor oil instead of Crisco. The egg fries very quickly, but the stove remains perfectly cold. In fact, if you wish, just to keep it handy, you can fry your egg on the morning newspaper. With a gadget like this, you can get up in the morning, sit on the stove, read the morning newspaper, and fry the eggs in your lap. Another example of the...
If you're wondering why, by the way, we don't use induction cooking all that often, you know, there was infomercials, before infomercials completely went out of style. One of the last ones was the New Wave or whatever, which was the induction cooktop. And they've pretty much only ever sold as gimmicks like that because it requires extremely high voltage, which means it wastes a lot of energy, essentially. That's ultimately what it is. It's also exceedingly dangerous. If you have a short of lower voltage, and don't get me wrong, house power is still dangerous, but you have to amp house power up considerably. I'd probably do thousands of volts, I'm not sure. But in order to do it. So you're increasing the danger involved, and you're generally using more energy to do the same thing. Generally speaking, that's why it's not used, except for in situations where the stove not being hot or the cook surface not being hot or whatever is ideal. It also is a good way to heat metal in particular fairly evenly, so it has some uses there as well. But that's why it's not, even though we've known about the technology for a long time, induction cooking, that's why it's not used all that often.
The fact that physical forces can be quite selective in their effect. All of the examples which we have cited thus far have been in the physical realm, and of course have been...
And so, as he's about to explain, but I'm going to explain too, that's exactly what he just said. All of the forces that he's been showing have been physical in nature.
Limited by that fact. We can, however, cite examples that transcend the purely physical and clearly demonstrate the reality of these two worlds. We find the examples in the historical record of this book. In the opening chapters of Genesis, we find God and man in perfect harmony. These two worlds are one. And then something happened. Man sinned. Man disbelieved and disobeyed God. And immediately, God withdrew himself from man and placed a barrier, invisible but very real, between himself and man. That barrier has continued to exist throughout the ages. But 20 centuries ago, according to the Bible, God became flesh and dwelt among us. He didn't remove the barrier. Instead, he stepped across it. He became flesh and blood as we are. And in so doing, he provided the way that we in turn might cross that barrier back to him. For 33 years, Christ lived on earth. Then he died on a cross outside the city of Jerusalem. But on the third day, he rose again from the dead. Let's go back to that first Easter morning and see what happened. We find the account in the 20th chapter of John's Gospel, beginning with the first verse. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him. Peter therefore went forth, and that other disciple, and came to the sepulchre. So they ran both together, and the other disciple did outrun Peter, and came first to the sepulchre. And he, stooping down and looking in, saw the linen clothes lying, yet went he not in. Then cometh Simon Peter following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothes lie, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. Then went he in also, that other disciple, which came first to the sepulchre, and he saw and believed. What did he believe? Why, he believed that Christ was risen from the dead. What did he see that made him believe that? An empty tomb? Oh, no. If he had seen an empty tomb, he would have agreed with Mary that someone had stolen the body of Christ. He didn't see an empty tomb. Instead, he saw the miracle of the undisturbed grave clothes. When Christ died, his body was prepared for burial according to ancient custom as a mummy. Christ may have been born in poverty, but he was not buried in a pauper's grave. Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man according to the Bible, claimed the body of Christ and prepared it for burial by wrapping it in fine linen cloth. Custom in the Middle East was to wrap the body in hundreds of yards of linen cloth, binding it very tightly. When Christ rose from the dead, he had a spiritual body, out of tune with the material substance of this earth, out of tune with his grave clothes, so he just vanished from them, leaving them sunken and hollow and empty. Somebody says, okay, that's all right, but why was the stone rolled away from the door of the tomb? It was not to let Christ out, but to let the disciples in so that they could see and believe, become eyewitnesses of an event of enormous significance. On the evening of the same day, the disciples were gathered in fear and confusion in a room with the doors bolted shut. Suddenly, Christ just appeared in their midst and said, Peace be unto you. How did he get in the room? Christ entered that room in the same way that he vanished from his grave clothes, and for the same reason. He had a spiritual body. A miracle was performed, all right. But the miracle was not that Christ should walk through the wall, but rather that the disciples, with their purely physical eyes, should be able to see him. We have said that Christ was out of tune with his grave clothes. What do we mean by this? Well, this phenomenon of resonance, or its lack, is not difficult to demonstrate, even in the purely physical realm of the laboratory. It is said that Caruso used to entertain his dinner guests by taking a goblet from the table. And then he would sing across the open end with that magnificent voice of his, and the glass would shatter. Now, I'm no Caruso, but it's not difficult to duplicate this feat here in the laboratory. That is, if we use an electronic voice. The trick is to find the one note that will break the glass. We can determine this by placing a coin in the glass and then tuning the frequency until resonance is reached.
That's a lovely sound.
At this frequency, if we bring the glass into the direct sound beam, it shatters instantly. The sound becomes a very real thing when it is in tune with the glass. Did you ever get a good solid electrical shock? Ordinary house current is 60-cycle alternating current. When you stick your thumb up a light socket, that's where you rattle. You're in tune. Let's take another look at that 1,000,000 volts.
So I think this demonstration that he's about to do right now, where he demonstrates how 1,000,000 volts at 60 cycles, which is normal house power, so that's what the 60 hertz is if you're unfamiliar, which is how many times the polarity pulses back and forth, positive, negative, because in alternating current, of course, it goes back and forth, positive, negative, instead of going in a closed loop like it would for direct current. At the 60 hertz, that's close to your body's frequencies. Now, again, I'm not a physicist. I'm not the best person to explain this. So I'm just giving you a rudimentary kind of layman's opinion on this. At a much higher frequency, that same 1,000,000 volts doesn't bother you at all. He's going to demonstrate that. And so what he's demonstrating in doing so is that there are things beyond, I mean, it goes back to what he said at the very beginning, right? There are things beyond our very senses that we can prove are there. And so he's relating that to what the Bible says is the two different realms, the human and the spiritual. Again, whether or not you believe in God or any of that, that's fine.
That was well over 1,000,000 volts with a lot of power behind it.
Is
if that were
solid
60-cycle alternating current and the charge...
Sorry, let me finish this thought real quick. Whether or not you believe in God, it is fine. The science on this is solid. So even if you're just interested from a strictly scientific perspective, that's fine. You don't have to you don't have to believe his connections to the Bible. But there's no voodoo going on here. There's no, smoke and mirrors. He is using actual scientific principle and relating that to the Bible from the way that he understands it.
Go through my body to ground, there's no question.
In a way that it's never been presented to me before.
But we've changed the frequency from 60 cycles to 65,000 cycles. And at this frequency, a lot of power can be taken through a human body. We use the aluminum sphere on top of the transformer merely as a discharge point for the high voltage. With the assistance of Mr. Metzger, I'm going to stand in direct contact with the transformer, permit the voltage to pass through my body and out through my fingertips. The demonstration is not an easy one, but it is one which illustrates our point in such a way that I hope you'll never forget.
Even knowing that this isn't going to hurt you,
I must remove my shoes.
I can't imagine standing in front of 1,000,000 volts like that.
It is necessary to provide metal caps.
Electricity is one of those things that
to prevent serious burn,
high
to
enough
provide
voltages
points of
scares the
discharge for the high
shit
voltage.
out of me.
Power.
So again, this isn't about, he's about to do the demonstration, but this isn't about the voltage. It was 1,000,000 volts before, it's 1,000,000 volts now. This is about that frequency, how fast the positive and negative is cycling back and forth.
On. Now, if there's any question in your mind about the amount of power that went through my body, I think this next demonstration will answer the question. It takes power to set a 2x4 on fire. Power. Lights.
Remember, he's standing on ground right now. That's gotta be so terrifying.
There are two reasons why we must be born again. We've discussed one. Man is out of harmony with God and separated from him by a wall of invisibility. But there's another reason, equally important. Man is not only out of tune with heaven, but he is in tune with the judgment of a righteous God upon sin. When Christ said, "You must be born again," it was not just idle talk. It was a statement of profound significance. A statement that has anticipated, as we have seen, the very latest discoveries of modern science. But what is far more important, it is a statement that has anticipated the deepest need of a human soul. In view of these facts, the most important question that any man can ask is the question that Nicodemus asked of Christ. How can a man be born again? The answer to that question is the message of this book. Unfortunately, man has his own ideas on the subject. The popular concept seems to be that we really don't need to be born again. If we pay our debts, treat our neighbor right, live the golden rule, and do the best we can, we'll be all right. But God says, no, you must be born again. A basic change must take place in man, in his nature, his thinking, his living, someday even in the material substance of his body. God calls this change new birth. How can we be born again? Once again, the message of this book, the Bible, is the answer to that question. And it's startling in its simplicity. It may be summarized in one verse, John 1:12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. I can almost hear a sigh of relief as someone says, why, is that all there is to it? Everybody believes. Are you sure? As we use the word believe, if we're sure, we say, I know. If we're somewhat uncertain, we say, well, I believe so. As the word believe is used in the Bible, it is far stronger than know. It is possible to know and not believe. It is possible for us to know that we're sinners, that the wages of sin is death. Yes, it is possible to know that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, died on the cross to pay the penalty of our sin, that we might live. It is possible to know all this and still be lost, still not believe it. Here's a simple illustration. Two statements concerning this chair. First, I know it will hold me up. Second, well, I believe it will hold me up. Which statement is correct? The first. I know that chair will hold me up because it's a good, strong chair. We wouldn't have it here in the laboratory if it weren't, but I don't believe it. Because as God uses the word believe, you can't believe in a chair standing up. Now I'm believing in the chair. I'm trusting myself to it. If a doctor should tell you that you have cancer, that if he doesn't operate, you're doomed to die, how do you believe in him? By agreeing with his diagnosis? No. You truly believe in the doctor when you let him operate, when you submit yourself to him. If I were to ask you right now, are you a child of God? Have you experienced new birth? What would your answer be? Some people would say, well, I just don't know. If that is your answer, then you're standing beside the chair. You may have agreed with the diagnosis, but you probably haven't yet submitted yourself to the great physician. For when you truly believe, you'll know, because you believe. You'll be able to say with the Apostle Paul, I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. Believing involves a decision that you can make right now.
All right. Apparently it wasn't nearly as long as the rest of that video. I'll take a look here in a second and see if there's anything else further on that might be of interest. But so again, I'm not trying to push anything onto my viewers as far as what you want to believe or don't want to believe. That's fine. But it's a perspective that I've never heard explained before. And it is interesting, if you are to look at it from a biblical perspective, that what we have discovered in science, both in physics, in chemistry, in all realms of science, essentially, except for, well, there's a couple, but it lines up quite well. It lines up in a way that is hard to deny in a lot of senses. But that's for you to decide. What's interesting to me is that while religion is not nearly as strong as it was in this country, in the 20th century, we do still have bigger churches than ever before. There's certainly more money in it than ever before, which, is sometimes good, is sometimes not. But there's very little of this. Anytime I've found connections between science and religion, it's either, people that are way out there on a limb, or it's old. It's old 20th century stuff. There seems to have been a dramatic disconnect in the two, and I don't really understand why. Maybe somebody can explain it. You can send me an email, jbu@usa.com. But every time I learn something new about science, which is, despite my complete ineptitude with physics, it is, science is, many different aspects of science are always of interest to me. And I'm always trying to learn more about them. But the more that I learn and the more principles about this world that we live in that I learn, the more what I read and have read in the Bible makes sense. Again, in a way that is almost hard to discount. And so I find it very difficult. At the same time, on the other end of that spectrum, we have a guy named Charles Darwin. And I used to be wholly anti-religious. I was born and baptized Catholic. I was raised semi-Catholic. I did my first communion and stuff, but that was really my extent of connection to the church. I went to a Catholic school, elementary school for a few years, where we went to church, 30 minutes every Wednesday or whatever. But that was like the most. We didn't go to church regularly on Sundays or anything. When my parents were getting divorced, I remember we went to church a little bit more during that time. But, my parents were overall much more saying that they're Catholic than they actually were Catholic. And a lot of my family was that way. My grandma was, of course, very religious, but most all of my aunts, uncles, cousins, nobody really was. So while I was baptized Catholic, I was always a little bit removed from it and rejected religion around the time I was 16 or so, as many teenagers tend to do. But one of the things in particular was I couldn't stand how just BS the whole Catholicism thing seemed. I'd been to a few different churches. I didn't really care for other types either, but I just didn't like the showmanship involved with Catholicism, as well as the hypocrisy and all those things, right? And so I became, and then also I've always been interested in science. And so the more I started to learn about science and those things, and the more I started to reject religion, the more I started to become an atheist. And when we're looking at that, I hate to use the word atheist because it just immediately creates all kinds of problems when you're trying to have these conversations. But when you're looking at that side of it, it all goes back to this man, Charles Darwin, in the beginning of the 20th century, end of the, what would that be, the 19th century. And Darwin himself, ironically, was religious, but everything kind of based out of that. And while we've found many things that align with Darwin's theory, it's crazy to me that there are basically nearly as many people that have put as much faith in this guy who wasn't even convinced by his own theory. He was religious himself, and he was his own biggest critic in a sense. There were, I don't remember all of this offhand, but there were two flaws essentially with this theory, and he flat out said that without those flaws being explained, that his theory was bogus, basically. 100 years later, there's a lot of people that have advanced the theory, but we still don't have any proof. There's no proof whatsoever. And so there's nearly as many people willing to put their faith, at least in America, willing to put their faith into a man, and less than 100 years worth of information and research and testing and all of that in a theory that still cannot be proven in any way. I shouldn't say in any way, but there's certainly no definitive proof. And either way, you still have to believe in something you can't prove because we can't go back in time. Versus man's oldest written text. Both are fantastical in a sense. And so ultimately, what brought me back to believing, and I certainly don't, I don't know that I sort of refer to myself as a Catholic just because that's what I've always referred to myself as, because that is what I was baptized as. That is what I knew as a kid. But church and organized religions and all of that, it's all created by men, and therefore it is all very fallible, right? If I believe in the Word of God, then man is fallible. And so anything man creates, including the church itself, is fallible. My mentor growing up too, I said that I was always disconnected from the church. However, my mentor growing up was, he was actually a priest, a Catholic priest even. And that wasn't because I was Catholic necessarily. It's just because we happened to have a Catholic church across the street, and I started working for the church, and eventually that led to working for him directly. And yes, I know I can hear all the jokes. It's fine to make them, but no, there wasn't anything untoward about it. He was a probably the best man I've ever known. One of the only people in my life that has ever just genuinely cared, I guess, without a reason to. It's not like he had any reason. Yeah, I wasn't his kid. It wasn't related to him. I wasn't anything like that. So, but nonetheless, I don't know. I think that you can't answer these questions, obviously. If I could answer them, I'd love to say I have some sort of definitive proof or conclusion for you or something like that, but I don't. Oh, there are more experiments in that video. Anyway, I'll look through them later and we'll play them tomorrow if if there's something worth watching. But I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are and where you guys are at on this. You can comment underneath the show on Rumble or on x.com/JBU_show. You're welcome to send me private messages. I know most people say they won't take private messages. You can private message me. I don't care. You can send me an email, jbu@usa.com. And I'm curious two things. I'm curious, one, did that video make any connections for you? Which, by the way, if you're wondering why the 65,000 hertz doesn't shock you, but the 60 hertz will shock you, the best explanation that I got from AI, because that's the only person I had to ask at the time, is simply that it's just reacting too fast for your body. Your body physically cannot react fast enough to that reverse in polarity that's happening 100 and some thousand times a second. And so it just it more or less doesn't know what to do. The problem with that explanation that I found is that doesn't explain why it doesn't damage your body. That explains why you don't feel any pain or anything. There's a lot of things that happen too fast for your brain to catch up to, right? But it doesn't explain why it's not causing damage to the body. And even if, it might be causing some level of damage, but it's certainly not causing. He stood under that 1,000,000 volts for a long period of time. longer than I expected him to, that's for sure. And it was obviously more than enough to kill you. So, I don't know. I would like a better explanation on that, too. If you're a physicist or a lot better with physics than I am, if you can explain why it doesn't kill you at 65,000 hertz, that would be great. JBU@USA.com to send an email directly. X.com/JBU_show. But as far as religion goes, if you once believed and you don't believe anymore, I want to hear about it. If you didn't believe and do believe again, I want to hear about it. And what convinced you one way or another? In my experience, I've found that a lot of people, whatever convinced them one way or another, they really didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. Like, oh, the world's a terrible place. Well, yeah, it is. But that's just, that doesn't do it for me, you know? Anyway, I'm going to take a quick look real fast here and see if there's any updates on what is going on in Mexico. Just to make sure. It is now past midnight in Mexico. And when we went through the story earlier in the show, I didn't find anything that was particularly new. Everything basically was from noon and earlier. And it was basically they killed the drug kingpin, and there was a bunch of buses lit on fire, ostensibly to block the road. There was a couple stores that were lit on fire. And then that was kind of it. There was a bunch of speculation about different things, but there wasn't really any information further than that of specific things that had happened. It was all speculation. Now, if you're an American there, get out as soon as you can catch a flight or whatever, get out. Otherwise, shelter in place. Try not to look like an American tourist. But let me, give me just a second here. Let me see. Looks like they called off the games in Mexico, the soccer games, because of it. I still have a shelter in place 5 minutes ago. Let's see what we got here. Stranded after Mexico drug lord killing sparks wave of violence. Mexico's most wanted cartel boss, head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, El Mencho, was killed. The killing sparked nationwide unrest with suspected gang members torching buses and businesses while clashing with security forces. More than 250 blockades, that's a lot more than we confirmed earlier, were reported across 20 Mexican states. And I told you, based on what we saw, well, my belief on that is pretty simple, that as soon as the military was attacking, I think that there were a lot of cartel members whose job was to go and block roads. And so I think that's why we saw a ton of vehicles being used to block roads and fires being set to block roads almost immediately, and then not a lot of stuff happening after that. There were some businesses burned and stuff, but there hasn't been any reports of mass killings. The alleged shooting at the airport apparently didn't happen. It was just panic. But as far as we know, flights are still canceled. And there is at least unrest going on, if not violence still. U.S. State Department urged American nationals in parts of Mexico to seek shelter and remain in residences or hotels until further notice. Other tourists were stranded after several U.S. carriers suspended flights to Puerto Vallarta. But yeah, it's still nothing new as far as specific violence or anything that's occurring. Just roadblocks. That's really all we see. There was claims made that there were going to go, if some sort of demands were not met. I'm not really sure what the demands would be since the guy's dead. But If some sort of demands weren't met, there was claims they were going to go and start taking hostages and stuff. So far, that doesn't seem to have materialized, or Mexico's keeping a tight lid on it. One of the two. But I don't think they'd be able to keep it from getting out. This isn't Iran. Yeah, I don't know. They're just it's really weird. It's weird that there was all this action this morning. There was a bunch of things put into motion, like the blockades, and then seemingly nothing. But we have no reports that things have died down either. Everyone's still acting all hyped up about it. It's odd. It's very odd. But operation triggered violent retaliation across multiple Mexican states. Cartel members set vehicles on fire, blocked highways, yada yada. Schools canceled in several Mexican states. Local and foreign governments alike warned their citizens to stay inside. Passengers arriving in the city international airport Sunday night were told it was operating with limited personnel because of violence. David Mora, Mexican analyst for International Crisis Group, said the capture and outburst of violence marks a point of inflection in Sheinbaum's push to crack down on cartels amid U.S. pressures. The killing of the leader, El Mencho, during an attempted capture was the highest profile blow against cartels since the recapture of El Chapo. The killing could give government a leg up in dealings with the Trump administration, which has been threatening tariffs or unilateral military action if Mexico does not show results in the fight against cartels. Mike Vigil, former chief of intelligence operations for the DEA, said Mexico had sent a strong message to Trump's administration that they are fighting aggressively and effectively. Against the most powerful cartels. He added that the majority of the information came from the Mexican armed forces and all the credit goes to Mexico. Except for us for the intelligence, but fine. Vigil said Mexico should seize the moment and launch an effective frontal assault based on intelligence. This is a big opportunity for Mexico and the United States if they work together. Security analyst David Cicito said that if relatives take control of the cartel, the violence seen on Sunday could continue. If others take power, they could be more willing to turn the page in order to try and continue operations. So I guess that's where we're at right now. My guess is most of the cartel members, most of the lower gang members are waiting to hear what they're supposed to do, basically. I'll say what I said earlier. If they do try and take tourists, especially American tourists, it would be about the dumbest thing they could do because it would pretty much ensure U.S. military action, whether overt or covert. It pretty much guarantees it. Trump is not that president, that's for sure. Whether you like him or dislike him, you can't deny the fact that he is more than willing to use the military and will protect American citizens abroad, whether rightly or wrongly. I mean, there's pretty much no wrong way to protect American citizens abroad, but it's at least nice to know that we have an administration that will do that. Having an American passport used to mean something. It used to mean don't touch me, no matter where you were in the world. Criminal organizations would go out of their way, terrorist organizations would go out of their way to avoid accidentally taking an American citizen hostage because it was a guarantee you'd be dead by the next 24 hours. We haven't done that in a long time. We haven't had a president that protected American citizens like that in a long time. Pretty sure there's no question that we have one now. So it would be pretty stupid for them to do. I guess we'll find out. All right, I got to get out of here. It is an hour and a half past how long I was going to go, but a lot of people were tuning in today, so I figured I'd let it run a little bit longer than usual. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to look through that video and see if there's anything else on there worth watching. And if there is, we will continue it tomorrow. We will be on 8 p.m. Pacific Coast time tomorrow is the goal. JBU_show on X is where you can find us. So that way you can make sure you don't miss it. And let me put it up on the screen. There we go. Don't forget to check out my co-host, Alan, the American Sincerest Podcast, at FirstAllan2 on X. And, of course, my buddy Austin from the Miller Talk Podcast, millertalk.substack.com. As I said earlier, if you want to answer any of the questions that I gave about, why you either have given up on religion or haven't, or vice versa, I guess that was both ways, but whatever. Or want to explain physics to me, you can send me an email directly, jbu@usa.com, or message me there on x.com/jbu_show. Please like and follow, subscribe, depending on whatever platform you're watching. It helps the show immensely. I can't thank you enough for it. And the goal is to always keep the show free and still add more and more content for you guys. So in order to do that, we need people to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Anyway, let's see. Did I have anything else? Let me check my notes. Literally. Man, I had some leftists to make fun of. Oh well, it'll have to be tomorrow. So again, 8 p.m. tomorrow. I always set I will always set the schedule going forward for Rumble. It shows up on Rumble and on X, I believe, as well as YouTube, that we have a show scheduled for X time. If that has to get pushed back, that is what I will update. And so whatever that says is going to be the most accurate information. We're going to do our best going forward to try and keep the time specifically to what we said. But that is the hardest part, as long as we're not making money on this, obviously, because I got other stuff I got to do. Nonetheless, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 o'clock Pacific Coast time. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. x.com/JBU_show. With that, my name is Chris, and this has been the JBU Show.